Outward is an incredible adventure, putting you up against massive beasts, armies of bandits, and even powerful liches. You can choose between tons of different weapon types, each making combat feel unique in some way. But what if we want to do things a bit differently? Outward is also well known for its unique take on magic, waving runic signs in the air to summon ghostly swords, placing curses on opponents to weaken them. You have flying discs called chakrams, elemental circles called sigils that amplify other spells. Man, we really do have a lot of cool magics to choose from, don't we? So let's do the only reasonable thing we can and test them in hardcore. Today, we attempt the magic only challenge run in Outward Definitive Edition. Step 1 is to select hardcore mode, giving us a 20% chance of character deletion anytime we die. Scary stuff, but more fair than most, so that's kinda nice. We create our beautiful character there and name her Cassandra. Cassandra the Mage. Sounds very pleasant if you ask me. I do have a legacy set up from a previous character. In fact, I have all 4 chests filled up with really good armor options for mages. Not really sure what we're gonna end up with, but it's good to be prepared. Once we're on the starting island, our first major issue comes into play. We don't have any mana. No mana means no magic, and no magic means, well, it means we can't fight anything. Somewhat of a problem depending on who you ask. So we get to looting. The first island has a few goodies like tattered attire, more tattered attire from Yazan, a pickaxe, a fishing pole, or rod I guess, and this machete that I can't use. We take a quick nap and awake back in our lighthouse where we grab a small backpack and get yelled at for just a little bit. Yeah, I'm a trog spawn because I owe you guys money. Give me a break, I almost died last night. Since we still have no way of getting mana, we continue to loot. The most notable item is a set of red light clothes. Somehow this is the first time I've ever worn these on a female character. I gotta say, not half bad, Cassandra. Not half bad at all. Selling all the iron weapons, clothes, or any other odds and ends lying around town nets us about 132 silver. We spend this at the Gazite Trainer to increase our health by 25. And while we can't attack with a weapon, no one said anything about not using one to block. Steady arm is a must-have as our main form of defense aside from dodging is going to be blocking. The amount left over goes to a nomad backpack. 50 carry capacity isn't much, but way more than 25 you start with. After snatching up a water canteen near the purifier, I decide to craft cloth knuckles. Burak can teach you a free skill based around the weapon you're carrying. None of these options can be used by a pure mage, all except for one. Cloth knuckles grants you enrage, which increases the impact of anything that deals it, including many of the magic sources. Heading out through the storage tunnels, we sprint past the trogs onto a sunny and beautiful beachside. We are here to save Michael Aberdeen, but it's important to be stealthy about it. A lone mantis shrimp prowls behind this rock. If he sees us, we won't be able to earn our tribal favor. Just a little sprint along the water, hurry up and spam dialogue so he gets his bandage, and we're good. Tribal favor acquired. Sleeping behind a rock for safety skips time until it's dark out. Now that the tide is down, we enter Starfish Cave. Avoid the shrimpy fellow in here while gathering 3 spots of blue sand. The stuff sells quite well, and we can find even more of it by traveling alongside the beach. Luckily, there aren't many predators out and about yet, it seems. And this is why you don't travel at night. I turn around after hearing combat music for kind of no reason, and oh no, the black pearlbird's right on my tail. He's incredibly fast, and I have no stamina left at all. Just to make it to the nearest door, just make it to the nearest door, and yes, safety at last. Cutting it a little close on that one. Since the Holy Mission entrance to Conflux Mountain isn't very easy to complete, and mainly I didn't want Zephyrian, our good buddy, to die while I just watched, we leave for another door, with a black pearlbird hot on our trail immediately. He chased me all the way up the hill, across a rickety bridge, even over to the blue chamber entrance itself. Leave me alone, man. What did I ever do to you? Inside, we need to navigate the trog-infested hallways. The path is very much a maze, which it just so happens you can easily navigate through when you've kind of played the game time and time again. Go figure, am I right? There are a lot of trogs here, but most can't catch you if you've got stamina. Here lies the heart of the mountain, a mana ley line where magic is more than strong. In the back, we can sell most of our blue sand and other belongings in exchange for a full set of scholar armor. Wearing the full set grants negative 30 mana cost and negative 10% cooldown on skills. More importantly, we can interact with the mana crystals themselves and exchange 10 health and stamina for 40 mana. This is 2 points of our life force in total, leaving more than enough stats to work with outside of casting. The Watcher, realizing my magic potential, offers 2 choices in skills for free: Fire Sigil for fire-based magic, or Reveal Souls to regen magic off of corpses. I selected Fire Sigil as we really need a good source of damage at the moment. Sadly, I made a huge mistake here and forgot to speak to the man again, missing out on the most useful early game magic spell. Yeah, this wasn't my best moment, I'll be honest. Now, I was sure to buy the cool boon for 50 silver down below and craft some Gaberry tartines at the stove. Leaving out through the back to another beach, we need to make sure and grab thick oil on our way back to town. One can be found close-ish to the Hyena Cave, another can be found outside the Trogden Blister Burrow, and there's a really secluded spot to the left of Montcalm Bandit Camp. Each of them is going to grant you 3 thick oil. When this stuff is combined with mana crystals, you get a Firestone, which is how you cast Fire Sigil. Was scary for a second as 2 hyenas managed to see me, but finagling with their AI on a trapped bridge let me bleed them with iron spikes. In town, we turn in the tribal favor to Risa, who very kindly lets me keep my own house. Thank you so much for not taking that, you're awesome. Yazan, it seems, is leaving for Levant, and Oliel is leaving for Monsoon. Risa also needs to head out to Berg herself, as each invites me to come join their faction. A tempting offer, but we can't even fight still, so might have to hold off on that one for a bit longer. Now, one very easy step to miss this time around is speaking with Roland. Off by the docks, we see a pretty unhappy fellow kneeling by the water. He forgot to activate the lighthouse and is the reason our boat sank only a few nights before. His brother Yazan now has a blood price on his head as the entire family is being punished for this. Suffice to say, the unskilled fellow is clueless on how to pay back what he owes. We need to be nice to him and reassure his confidence anytime we come across his path. Outside town once again, we head towards the friendly Immaculate's cave to learn Possessed. Magical boons are essential forms of dealing with elemental attacks, and weather for that matter. Ask our good buddy for power and we get the Decay boon. Once again, I trek all the way back into Conflux Mountain, through the Blue Chambers, maze-like halls, and back into where the mana crystals reside. I was sure to mine any mana crystals that were safe enough because I still can't craft Firestones yet. Speak with the First Watcher again to purchase Flamethrower for 50 silver. Costs us 15 mana per cast, applies burning, and deals some significant fire damage from either a lantern or torch. Ah yes, an actual attack. Only took me a lot longer than it should have. The mana-infused water around these crystals actually grants you mana regen, helping me to use the skill whenever I want, really. And use it I did, because while it is very foolish to fight a Taunosaur this early in the game, I am that fool. The cold Taunosaur is very fast, deals high damage, and can apply bleed that will result in a guaranteed death in this situation. Flamethrower is the optimal damage for him, and burning means we can kind of run out the clock as long as it's applied here and there. The main problem is Flamethrower has a really long casting time. We need to activate the flames as this dino attacks just outside of range to hit him. Slowly move in and then back up. Not as much damage as we could deal, but safe enough to live another day. This was terrifying as one wrong button press and you have no way to avoid some disgusting attacks. Patience and careful timing won out in the end as the blue cretin slumps over. Yes, cooked dinosaur was exactly what I had in mind for dinner. At an alchemy kit I was sure to carry around with me, you can craft 1 thick oil with 1 mana stone for a firestone. I had enough for about 5, which should be plenty. Back in the blue halls, I set about clearing this infestation of trogs. Using a fire sigil will consume a firestone as you throw it into the air. The crystal hovers there, creating a sigil of magic down below. This deals no damage on its own, but allows you to combo other spells. The reason a fire sigil is so useful early on for magic users is they cost 7 mana to cast. And then you can use a flint and steel of all things to spawn a circle of fire. That action costs no mana at all, looks pretty darn cool, and rapidly burns down anything that touches the flames. An entire squad of trogs melts away as we run circles around them. Not only that, but you can keep casting this as long as the sigil exists for its 60-second duration. Trogs do have a chance to drop thick oil, and trog mages drop their staves that can be decrafted into 3 mana crystals. We can also equip one of these staves for negative 10 mana cost, and thus we have at least a goal in mind for this run. With no way of dealing damage, I have completely rebound all my attack keys in the game, so no risk of accidentally attacking any enemy with melee, and we could still use a staff to gain whatever passive benefits it offers. Trog staffs are unique because they act as an okay-ish light source, which is more fun than useful, but something at least. Now that my Trog genocide is wrapped up, we can craft up to 10 firestones and head out once again, where I can really show you how ridiculous flint and steel can be. This doesn't deal damage in the middle. Instead, you can sit the enemy on the end of this ring and they'll take 6 fire damage every 0.25 seconds, while also applying burning, which deals its separate 3 damage per second. Block melee attacks with a staff and you have the Dummy's Guide to Mage and Outward. Gets funnier and funnier every time you try it. Time to get revenge on that black pearl bird from earlier. Spark is a magic skill all mages learn upon acquiring mana. Use it inside a fire sigil for a ranged fireball that explodes. This one does cost mana to use but is far quicker to activate, and thus we have acquired a nice chicken dinner. Well, nothing really left over here for us at the moment, so let's hop on over to Endmerker Forest. Making our way into Berg, we can purchase a luxury tent for the best stamina reduction buff, as well as a prospector backpack. It does cost 100 silver, which is hard to part with right now, but 75 capacity is something I desperately need. And I know we just got here, but there's actually something else I'm looking for. And that something is indeed in the deadly volcanic region of Caldera. Finding ourselves in Caldera after only a few hours of gameplay is horrifying. This region is filled with enemies that give endgame builds a tough time. Not to mention, fire does not even tickle several enemies over here. Yay, my only damage source thrown right out the window. Regardless, we're here for more thick oil. As it turns out, the oil refinery houses an enormous amount you can technically collect without fighting. Technically doesn't mean easily. Our first task is to enter the upper refinery. Here we can run past several Caligrays and a dangerous gargoyle to pull this lever. The overall oil level has been reduced as the lever activates a series of pumps here. Leave, and as we head down the hill, there are a few spots that contain thick oil. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Inside the lower refinery that's now accessible, we can attempt the hard part. Past a pair of Boros and Caligrays is another lever. Down the ramp near the far end is an additional lever. Back near the entrance is our last lever. Each lowers the oil just enough to make the next accessible, all being guarded by some atrocious monster who can two-hit me. Oh, and for some reason you can sneak past the gargoyle, but not back the other way. Ah, good old stealth mechanics. With that, we've now lowered oil enough to reach the deepest part of the cave. Past a tor crab, we find a single room containing 6 thick oil spots. On top of the several others in this dungeon and around the outside pipes, we can collect 48 thick oil, which, if you're able to do the math, equates to 48 firestones. Obviously, I booked it back to Endmerker Forest, where the lush green forest makes me feel safe once again, because nothing gives off a safe feeling like the Cabal Wind Temple, where I immediately underestimated the Immaculate guarding this place. Sigils, while packing a massive amount of power, require a lot of effort to use correctly. You can't use them mid-combat as the animation takes several seconds to get off. We instead need to set one up out of enemy range and then pull foes towards it, turning everything into a game of how long will my sigil last. Small stuff is no problem as they die as soon as the fire connects. Larger opponents can be seen burning for some time though, and wow, do enemies love to stand inside the circle of fire instead of on the ring. Plus, I noticed certain skill animations place your equipped weapon in a resting position. You need to pull it back into blocking stance, but get caught off guard and you don't have time. Most of these problems don't really show up as you increase in power, but for right now, the lower damage caused me to make several mistakes. At half health, I chose to readjust into better position. Plus, having 2 hardcore runs under my belt already, I know better than to fight without health potions in my pocket. That wake-up call aside, Cabal Wind Temple goes the way it always does. I pulled a lever, exploded enemies for free, and then ran all the other monsters inside to do the same. About 4 shell horrors go down, several little dudes, and a single vile illuminator. Yes, even the mini-boss of this dungeon can be killed with a magic explodey trap. Yes, this is definitely magic, and if you don't think it is, you're just wrong. Oh hey, look at all this free loot. Drag my own feet back to town, selling a massive haul worth about 1,600 silver. I wasn't totally sure on this scholar staff at the alchemist, but an extra -5 mana cost goes a long way early on. I was also able to craft more firestones for 17 sigils in total. I promptly used them to roast me up some bandits. Much better damage. The Hallowed Marsh is only a short walk away. Here we can get a considerable upgrade, but not without taking a risk, as the green marsh is covered in bandits, dinos, and large green dog machines. So apparently the more wide a monster is, the better flint and steel becomes. Immaculates were so thin, they could avoid all the fire ticks. But on the dog, he's taking damage while almost entirely in the middle. Definitely something I wanted to see right about now. To open up the way forward, we enter a ziggurat and collect the Jade Idol. Several green guardians block my my path. But while my defense is non-existent, my super cheesy damage is almost too real. Fire Sigil is carrying right now. I already knew it was good, but this is a tad overkill. Place the Jade Idol on the pedestal and our large gated bridge has officially been unlocked for good. Nothing to see here, just me wasting 9 Firestones trying to get to town. How come the first time you get here, the whole world seems to flock to this one path I take? I mean, yes, I love the combat in this game, but for real, I'll be back in Caldera for Thick Oil again tomorrow if this keeps up. Finally in town, there's one thing I need. The Philosopher Skill Tree. Mana Ward when used in a Fire Sigil grants Immolation or way more fire damage. The Breakthrough grants 0.34 mana regen per second, which while not really needed, it feels amazing to have. And finally, we can grab a second sigil, that being Ice Sigil. Functions the same as fire, but uses other skills and requires ice stones, which are much tougher to get but doable. Now, chakrams are an option. These are flying discs that count as a magical melee weapon. Anything that uses mana to deal damage is more than fair for this run, but I think we're gonna avoid them this time around. Chakrams really do their own thing, not really combining with other magics without lots of effort. And if I ever do a chakram only run, well, this would make that never happen, so I guess yell at my future self to try them if you're mad about this decision. We can also buy slow metabolism from the other trainer here, so food and water isn't a pain to deal with anymore. A nice quality of life upgrade, I must admit. The other reason we came here is my second armor set of choice is the Priest set. All 3 pieces are sold at the shopkeeper, but they aren't cheap after buying a full skill tree. I could get the hood, but that's it. So with some marshmallow and tartines in my pocket, I set out for the old shack up the hill. Inside is a Wendigo, the only one found in the entire swamp, oddly enough. So this is what it looks like to fight an enemy weak to fire. Fireball managed to knock him off the edge for some fall damage as well, which is cool. Stand in the blazing fire with my favorite weapon, Patience, and the super scary monster is fried to a crisp. With some decent loot in hand and more dinos vanquished outside, we can buy the White Priest robes, and gosh darn it, I still don't have enough for the boots. One quick trip around the entire swamp, fighting alpha taunosaurs, regular taunosaurs, bandits, phytosaurs, and golden golems, brings us to the Spire of Light. Loot a bunch of these mechanized killing machines for boxes that sell for high amounts, and go back out to fight one last duo of bandits. I skipped through that pretty quick, but in case you're wondering, that's about an hour of fighting the literal swamp itself. All for some dang boots, man. But hey, the matching set looks really nice. We keep the exact same negative mana costs as the last, while gaining 60 resistance to decay, cold, and fire damage, with not terrible physical defense, by mage standards that is. With all this running around, I know exactly what I want next. Pay for a trip to Harmattan, and there it is. Efficiency for 25 extra stamina. I may be a magic user, but according to Outward, I am a cross-country runner as well. No, literally, I'm running across this world excessively, and this run just started. You ain't seen nothing yet, is what I just thought of after remembering Caldera sample farming. This is gonna be a long adventure, isn't it? More stamina was an excellent reason to travel over to the Antique Plateau. Now that I'm here though, there isn't much I can do that doesn't involve a huge risk. Golems roam all over this region, and they're a mage's mortal enemy. But since we're extremely low on firestones already, let's go get some more of those. Near the lower section of the map, we can take a detour off into some green corruption. In the very back is a wind altar that activates once we reach it. No, I don't have wind magic at the moment, but at least it's going to be active when I do. 2 rock mantises for a single firestone nets 2 mana stones. Good math on that one that I really can't mess up. And here we have the most beautiful area in Outward. Man, do I love the look of this magical valley. Maybe it's just the colorful fumes talking, but this water is so refreshing, man. Several mana crystals can also be mined here, and against some Vebers, we get to see the Ice Sigil in play. So this thing sucks. The problem is Ice Sigil can be used with Mana Push, Mana Ward, and Push Kick to create ice explosions. Well, Push Kick is out completely, as that may possibly deal damage with the kick itself, thus dealing magic damage while also not dealing magic damage. Yes, Flint and Steel didn't need magic to use either, but it's an exception because it summons an actual magical attack only with no physical damage. Then the other 2 great skills for this have really high cooldowns. We still want Ice Sigil because it does ridiculous damage to certain enemies and always staggers anytime you get hit. Just not a use every fight kind of option like fire tends to be. Inside the Trog Cave, I managed to win some lengthy fights while collecting very little of use. We can craft up to 13 Firestones though, to keep on moving. While I enter the Wendigo Cave and face the frozen dangers below, I bet you're beginning to see a problem with sigils. They're great damage-wise, but very tedious to upkeep, especially early as you can't just make the crystals needed on a whim. Well, there are a few other magic sources that help alleviate this issue, we just need the coin to buy them. Oh, and that Wendigo, he's dead by the way. Mage cast explosion. Moving on. In this specific cave, we can see a very unique item, frozen mana crystals. When mined, they actually grant cold stones. Kinda slow to farm these out, but always an option. In the back of this icy domain, we find a pile of human bones. Something has spawned from them and hungers for meat. Give it a single piece of raw meat and you receive the Chill Hex. This is indeed magic that can weaken enemies to ice. Too bad you need to use it in melee range, so it's never getting used. Cool mini quest though. After suffering my way through the cold, we returned to town with some coin in hand. At the Hex Mage Trainer, we're able to purchase Jinx and Torment, both long-range skills that only cost mana to cast. Finally, something that we can use instead of stones for the future. Nightmares is also a decent passive to reduce mana burn. Essentially, mana in this game burns itself as you sleep, making half your blue resource unusable until you use potions or just a lot of magic to fix it. Less of that is always good as a pure caster. With lots of firestones now in my possession, I need some way to combat the horrific weather. A fur helmet from the trader isn't really enough, but the cheapest option and lets us get by. Seriously though, it's been a while since I had to combat Outward's weather mechanic. Winter really isn't all that common, and by the end game, I always have armor that naturally combats it. At some points, I was using the fire sigil itself to warm up, as it does increase temperature when you're inside. Some Kazite bandits got in my way, and they dropped nice items to sell. This fire elemental was hiding behind a building. He's as good a time as any to explain my new skills. Jinx is a very spammable magic skill that places a hex on the target. This hex is completely random every time, selecting through all the different elements. Once placed, it does no damage itself, but will reduce enemy damage and defenses of that element. For example, Ice Hex means more ice damage for you to deal, and it takes more. So really powerful stuff as a debuffer. Torment costs a decent chunk of magic to cast and will actually activate all hexes in the area, causing them to do a small explosion of damage and activate their effect. Fire hexes activate burn, decay activates poison, and ice inflicts slowdown. As a mage, you can snipe down all your enemies easily without needing crystals or skill combos. The downside is Jinx can often apply the same hex several times over. What you want is all the different hexes, making Torment instantly drop the enemy. But Jinx loves to kinda troll you. And hey, look at that. 3 whole particles, 5 fire stones, and 3 mana stones. Dude, this guy was the jackpot for sure. Crafting incense with those particles can make us loads of coin, and I thought of a pretty fun way to get even more as well. Down we go, venturing into the blizzard once again. We're looking for another corruption zone. This time, however, it's containing a dangerous cult of dark mages. A powerful wizard here is using his servants to drain adventurers and other roaming people of their life, bringing it back to him so he can remain immortal. We don't really have much tying us to this specific quest, I really just go where the loot is. While I completely demolish this band of sickening fiends, let's talk about sigil stacking. Sigils can in fact be placed down in the same position. Fire sigil on top of a fire sigil adds no benefit. You don't get a double fireball or anything. However, fire sigil on an ice sigil does let both work at the same time. Neither of these share any skills together, but it creates this extremely defensible point you can almost never be harmed in. The one skill both do share is Mana Ward. Used with both down, we're granted a massive ice explosion, so amazing damage in a wide radius that knocks all enemies back. And because of the fire sigil, we get Immolation. Now, Immolate, as it's actually named here, isn't like in other games where it deals damage to the enemy. No, it actually deals 0.5 fire damage to you and you alone. The benefit is that you get a plus 30% increase to all fire damage. This massive boost in damage for the entire fire sigil costs you nothing if you take any food for decent healing over time. And it lasts the same duration as the sigil, so one cast and you're kinda good to go. Not only that, but using Mana Ward makes you completely immune to damage for 4 seconds. Yes, this can be used to nullify damage, although it's better here to save you while still getting your damage off. This is just one of the many combos possible through sigils that we're gonna cover in this playthrough. But just note, sigil stacking gets really strong really fast. Of course, that fire damage also extends to the fire hex, meaning we now have a ranged explosion that literally cooks enemies. This kind of magic is wild, man. Not the best loot I've ever seen, but a wolf chakram ain't half bad. With this, we can purchase the Bloodlust passive from Hexmage, leaving us with only 1 breakthrough point left, but now any death around us grants 5 max health, mana, and stamina back to the player, completely erasing any need you would have for teas that cure burn. Always having your max stats is a massive quality of life option and lets you use far less potions in general. While Blood Sigil would be really powerful to have in our arsenal, I instead chose to learn Cleanse. This actually lets you create Darkstones for the Blood Sigil, and I figured it might be nice to have for getting rid of corruption, should that ever become a problem. I know we've seemingly been doing nothing in this region forever, but I need just a little extra silver to move on to another region. Time to take on some golems. In the clock tower, if you can even see them through this dense corruption, are several dangerous machines who have not yet been shut down. The beast golem gets exploded instantly, as Spark seems to deal 2 instances of damage if you're in close range. Yeah, like that needed to be even stronger than it was, I know. The sword golems are the real problem. With massive impact and their infliction of pain, I can get cut down in just 2 or 3 hits. Not to mention burning can't be applied on a robot, so our damage is far lower. Sigil stacking still seemed to prevail in the end, as blocking with a staff is just safe enough to stay in close while still avoiding damage. Another one finds his way towards me, where I promptly magic missile him repeatedly. Now for the ultimate challenge. An enemy you honestly should avoid at all costs as a mage. The Galvanic Golem. I only fight like 3 of these for the entire run, so pay close attention. This is a robot who has 3 different magic attacks. A ranged ball of lightning that attaches where it lands, continuing to deal damage. 3 shots of lightning that spread out quickly, and a close-up fire blast dealing huge damage. And I think inflicting burn. Sitting in this corruption for so long has also made me very weak to lightning, and that isn't even half the real problem. The real problem is hexes take far too long to whittle him down. Without overtime debuffs from fire and poison ticking away, he becomes a sponge. Sigils are great, but good luck activating them before you're blasted with a nuke ton of fire. It's also pretty awesome when he sits a ball of damage on top of your sigil, so now you can't even use it. Meet the 100% complete counter to mage gameplay. I was absolutely stunned by how difficult this encounter turned out to be. He had me running back and forth, summoning multiple sigils, taking 3 health potions. I pulled out the works on this guy for like no reason at all. He's not even the elite version of himself. Eventually, I managed to plink enough hexes on him for Torment to do its thing. But hear me when I say this. Avoid at all costs. At all costs, people. Pulling the lever here grants access to an ornate chest that had subpar RNG for me today. At least we got a power coil and a golem rapier from crafting as well. I mean, that sells for 300 silver alone. Finally, we have enough to leave Harmattan, heading on over to the illustrious town of Levant. Remember, I still wasn't able to purchase Blood Sigil. That is arguably the most powerful source of damage in this game, but just barely beyond my reach, as winter was making that region very challenging to loot. Smooth the Tailor, of course, sells warm for 50 silver. The thing that would have definitely helped me up my temperature back in the snow. Nope, I am totally not upset about this timetable at all. And here we see why I bought Cleanse from before. This skill consumes a mana stone and your built-up corruption level to create a dark stone. It is great for getting rid of high corruption levels that debuff your character, but it also applies bleed and deals massive damage when you try this. Except, there's a complete workaround. Quickly activating Mana Ward just before using Cleanse makes you completely immune during that damage. So now you take a bandage to heal up bleed, and good as new. Yes, Mana Ward is that good, folks. Infinite corruption cleansing, and there's never a bad time to start stocking up on dark stones. The Scorching Desert offers us our biggest possible upgrade. That being said, the upgrade does require us to fight the most powerful enemy in the game. We are heading to the Compass Guardian. I chose to do this fight at night because while the lower lighting makes it hard to see enemies, it also lets me avoid the scorching heat offered by the daytime in this dry desert. Fire isn't exactly the best source to use against robots once again, but the double explosions you can pull off when enemies get close makes it the best tool regardless. There are multiple types of metal beasts here, none of them being that much of a challenge, since blocking gives you enough control. One huge aspect of being a mage is of course Gaberry Wine. Taking this stuff grants more physical defense, which is very rare, negative mana cost, hey we love that stuff, but it will reduce your stability. Against golems, this gives us about 2 or 3 blocks possible before we need to regain our stagger meter. So far, so good. Ah, there he is, the Compass Guardian. A unique white golem wielding 2 massive elemental swords. Completely immune to overtime effects, not weak to any element except ethereal, which I don't have, and highly aggressive. My initial plan was to set up sigils and keep him inside them. After only 2 fireballs sent out, I realized, oh crap, Those did literally 0 damage. Then after running backwards, screaming like a little girl, a strategy appeared. Hexes can be used at long range, keeping me out of his disgusting melee reach. But I'm nowhere near as fast as this monster. Turns out you don't need to be faster than him. The garden's backside has this wall with 2 stairwells. As he runs down one side, you sprint to the other. Activate Torment so he chases you down once again, then jump off and repeat. It looks a little janky and can be hard to tell what's happening because of the dark, plus takes forever. I actually think I was here for a full 10 minutes. So long, in fact, that I needed a fire sigil just to ease my newly acquired cold. And it was light out by the time he went down. None of that even matters though, because as I think for our second mini-boss of the game, we took down the hardest one. The only appropriate thing to go along with that gaberry wine was of course some cheese. For our efforts, we received the Compass Wood Staff, which has a negative 20% mana cost and a plus 20% fire damage bonus. Massive for how we're playing right now, and I was psyched that we managed to pull this off. We do still want one more skill tree, so let's head on up into the electric lab for some goodies. Each fight is slow and full of kiting around my magic. The Thunderbolt Golem was more challenging than usual, as these stairs made it difficult to maneuver. Holding at least a few stones in my pockets was something I learned to do very quickly. Forget to store them there, and you're simply unable to cast another sigil without taking damage. If only Mana Ward didn't take so long to cool down. The absurd power that it packs looks amazing, but then standing around for the next 15 seconds is kinda brutal. There are more power coils in this dungeon with a very nice coil lantern hidden behind some bookshelves. I'm personally convinced that the shrimp guarding it was cheating with aimbot. I never managed to catch him in 4K, but I know what I saw there. Ah, sweet light that I can never turn off because I always forget. With the elevators in prime position, we head on up to take on the 3 elite golems. They aren't nearly as strong as the Compass Guardian, actually not even close at all. Each was taken down by the Fire and Ice combo. Immolate's plus 30% damage bonus does not play. Add on that extra 20% from my staff, and we really are just using Magic Missile from D&D at this point. Costs basically nothing to cast and is usable every few seconds. Also, our fashion right now is kind of going hard. I really like the Holy Magician theme. Sadly, I did run out of ice sigils for the final machine. Not that I even needed it. Guys, this isn't even me at half strength. I have 2 more sigils to go. With the golems defeated, we accept our reward of an ancient whirlig spear, turn on this purple glowing machine, and pick up my Czar Stone. Now that ancient ornate chests have popped up all over the desert, I loot a few while heading back towards town. Almost 2,000 silver grants access to fast maintenance for better equipment repairing, armor training, which actually doesn't matter as mage armor rarely has negative stats, and 2 trips with a trader heading back to Harmattan, then over to Berg. Well, shoot, that was really stupid of me. I just remembered I dropped all my excess thick oil before looting and forgot to pick it back up in Levant. That was only another, I don't know, 20 firestones. Where's the Mafino's backpack when you need it? Mist can of course be purchased in the large hall for ethereal bonuses, and the walking ain't over yet as we're back in Chersonese. Not exactly sure how this happened, but 4 hyenas managed to chase me down. My guys, you're literally 1 shot from me. This was not the right move. Ghost Pass is a joke. While these astral beings usually pose a major threat, elemental damage smokes them. So we move through the crumbling tomb in seconds. Rusted Enforcer is yet another golem. How we ended up fighting pure golems for the first half of my mage existence, I genuinely have no idea. This one learns how strong Mana Ward can be, as I was immune for all 3 times he hit me there. Then Fireball, 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 and another Ice Blast. Yawn. This is hardly even a challenge at this point. Finally, the snow has been cleared up just in time for me to activate the Chersonese Wind Altar. And even more finally, we can learn ancient forms of magic from the Cabal Hermit hiding away in his tower. Mana Push, which can be used in every single sigil except for fire. More Weather Defense, yes please, I've had enough of that for 1 run. Shamanic Resonance, so boons grant 30% defense and damage bonus instead of just 20. And Wind Sigil, which doesn't require any stones to use. Sadly, Conjure is also just out of my reach at the moment. Not to worry, as Wind Sigil is all the upgrade we need. Inside this old wine cellar, we could take out 2 ghosts to collect more Gaberry wine. There's several bottles here, as you can imagine. Using one of these at a corrupted gravesite summons the Ghost of Vanace, who is the weakest mini-boss in the entire game. Sorry buddy, you weren't even worth popping a sigil for. While I give this accursed Wendigo the runaround, let's talk about Wind Sigil. Still uses some mana to cast, like all sigils, but requires no stones. Instead has a long cooldown and can only be used in regions that have wind altars activated. Spark can be used inside for a short-range lightning explosion. Very powerful, very spammable, but enemies must be near you. Mana Push, on the other hand, deals absurd impact and creates a long-range ethereal projectile. In combo with Fire Sigil, Spark deletes even the most elite enemies in only 2 uses. Very hard to see with all these particles going on, but so dang strong. Myrid gets his skull crushed in today as we helped him in my last run. Can't help the skeletons every time, now can we? Even though a part of me feels a little bad for doing this. Moving on, this dungeon does spit us out at Montcalm Camp, where I almost died to bandits. I just got done breaking the most powerful golems and a cannibalistic frozen monster. But no, bandits are what do me in. Oh, that's why. Actual human enemies tend to dodge fireballs like every time you use one. Fair enough, I guess, but it won't be enough to stop me. And with our power coils from the electric lab, we can access Mafino's trading backpack. I wanted to use a more unique option for this run, but it only took this long to realize carrying 50 stones around for sigils requires the 110 capacity backpack, no 2 ways around it. More thick oil there never seems to be enough of, and at last we take a well-deserved nap back in town. Home sweet home, oh how I've missed you. At this point, we have still not started our faction quest. Even still, we can go ahead and clear out Vendeville Fortress. Croc dies from a ring of fire that got placed before he even started the fight. Wasn't even all that fair to him this time, not gonna lie. His fellow guards fall to the flames immediately after. Rospa will be really tough as per usual, so let's get rid of Balira first. Another early sigil down, and Balira just got one shot. Is she really that weak to fire? What? That wasn't even with Immolate added on. These 2 bozos met a similar fate, as for some reason my endgame build is doing well against mere humans. A surprise to be sure. Balira does have a guaranteed drop of 1 arcane robe, slightly better defenses with more negative mana cost, and skill cooldown. Just a straight upgrade to the white robe, although not quite as fashionable. Summoning a wind sigil before we open this door lets us blast bandits through the gate. No danger to ourselves whatsoever, while the enemy fears my glorious cheesing. Rospa is a different fight from the rest, as he has Kazite archers who pelt you with arrows. Archers are in fact a dangerous aspect of Outward. Even in good armor, they can deal half your health instantly. Missing several of my magics in a row led to some disastrous results. Retreating to the safety of a new fire sigil takes care of Rospa as he carelessly peeks around the corner. Also, you may notice that my hotbar has no room in it. This was why I was so afraid of a full mage playthrough. Health potions are extremely difficult to take if not slotted for easy access. We simply have no room for them without giving up important skills. With Vendeville defeated, I head out to clear this region of its monsters. Mad Captain resides in an old cave hidden along the cliffside. He was technically a fight. Blocking against enemies with low amounts of stagger really isn't fair. Crazy Skeleton meets a burning wall and loses. Golden Matriarch is guarded by several electric minions. Oddly, these versions do in fact get set on fire. My guess would be that normal golems are entirely made of metal, with the gold lich minions being more bio-metal mixes. The Lightmender did conduct some unpleasant experiments in this old lab, so who knows what these things are really made of. Fire just so happens to perfectly counter the Matriarch's high HP regen. Add in my 50% fire damage, make that 80% with a boon active, and we can take down formidable beasts without lifting a finger. Had to be careful here as this enemy sports several AoEs, and if she sits on your sigil, you can't use it. Just imagine if there was a sigil that moved with you. That would be awesome, albeit a little too good. She dropped a light particle for me with the elemental dropping another one. The plan was to use these for enchanting, but if I recall correctly, that didn't end up happening. Pull this lever, pull this lever, and finally, pull this lever as well. Back in the main room, a magical barrier has been released, allowing me to snatch up the Lightmender's own personal lexicon. I also saved runes for a separate run since they use a lot of click slots I don't have, but for buffing purposes, we will want this for runic defense in the future. One final beast awaits my challenge, that being the Trog Mage. Over in Blister Burrow, we demolish her. This is one of the first major enemies you're supposed to fight, and Trogs as a species are incredibly weak to lightning. Literally zero threat in this place. With the Trog Shield and Giant Heart Garnet now in possession, we can access a locked gate near the entrance. Slot an Aquamarine Gem and Sapphire into both doors, granting 3 large health pots next to this unfortunate soul. His misfortune is our reward. In town, we turn in the shield for silver, but this time keep the Heart Garnet. It can get us some silver from Hell and Turnbull, but let's hold on to it for later, just in case. Burak thanks me for stopping Vendeville Fortress from going to war with them, granting me the town key, which I promptly used to open up the legacy chest locked away in Sierzo's storage. Looks like for this one I placed in a black wide hat. The legacy has upgraded it into the white wide hat. excellent item for mages that may come in handy because of that 10 hot weather defense. A couple people asked me to show off a few more legacy options. I won't need all the ones hidden in this run, but each is some of the best magic-based gear, and chests store infinite extra gear. No harm, no foul. With some blue sand stocked up, I can now craft many cold stones. 1 blue sand and a mana stone grants 3 cold stones, making them far easier to craft in bulk. Just remember, blue sand isn't easily accessible in every region like thick oil is. On my way back over to Ghost Pass, since I really want Conjure before leaving Chersonese, I ran into an unfortunate Wendigo. Hexes are a fantastic way to pull enemies towards you without getting that far from your sigil. Running back, and poor creature. Never even got a single second to try an attack. Now we're just being mean. Make my way to the Cabal Hermit really quick, purchase Conjure for 600 silver, and finally we have everything from the skill trees except for Blood Sigil and 1 passive on Hex Mage. Everything we will need until endgame at last. Traveling over to Berg, this bandit manhunter can be spotted off in the distance. Not sure if he's looking for me or not, but I won't wait and find out. Ice Sigil has become far more valuable now that we can use Mana Push, sending out a projectile of ice with very good range. Now all 3 of our sigils have a long-ranged attack, and an explosion when up close, but the true magic power would soon be revealed. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, we haven't even seen the one true magic skill, that being Conjure. But we do need to activate the Wind Altar here, or else Wind Sigil is worthless. After quickly making my way back to Caldera again, collecting 42 thick oil, and walking all the way back to Berg to craft 25 Firestones, we can begin our faction quest. Starting the game after playing for hours. My favorite way to do it, of course. For this run, we're joining up with the Blue Chamber Collective. On my bow run, we joined the Heroic Kingdom. On my Great Axe run, we joined the Holy Mission. Risa Aberdeen is the leader this time around, but before I can be accepted in, I need to prove myself. Give Sacred Battleborn a fire rag over inside the town inn. Yeah, that's really all it takes. Not the illustrious club they would have you think it is. We are now aligned with the Blue Chamber, who are the main ruling house in Outward. They tend to bump heads with the Kingdom of Levant and Holy Mission priests who follow Elat, but most of the smaller towns and villages are one with the Blue Chamber. 500 silver down finally grants us a nice house to rest in. 3 days go by before any new adventure is thrust upon us. Hey, a small rest from time to time is just as important as anything else. Reconvening with Risa days later, and it seems all the tribes are gathering here for a very important meeting. We head inside, speaking to each individual as to get a feel for the room. Each is as displeased as the last. Old Levant wants to take over as the rulers of the desert. New Levant thinks they don't deserve to. Sorbor is here to keep an eye on their business prospects. Cyrene hates everybody. Zephyrian has better things to do, like hunt manticores. Holy Mission priests are in disagreement with the town leader of Monsoon. Oliel is having a pretty bad time, it seems. Sirocco seems to be missing for some reason, even though they called this meeting in the first place. Then there's Berg, who's us, worried about going to war with Levant. Did you get all that? Every faction group is here to discuss whatever problem is ailing them, while Sirocco's ambassadors are mysteriously missing. Risa, expecting trouble, sends me to the inn to see if Sirocco's men have arrived yet. On my way there, the ground beneath me shakes as a massive explosion ruptures out behind me. This can't be good. Someone has attacked the meeting, scattering the ambassadors all over town. In the necropolis, we dispatched 2 poor souls who weren't really prepared for a wizard of my caliber. The archives have been broken into by some unknown group. Looks like they escaped through the ancestors' resting place. Bertolt lies dead in this decrepit cave, having been murdered by those who ordered the attack on Berg. The users, according to this note, wielded guns, so likely one of the 2 groups living out in the desert. Some chamber lords have been captured out by the burning woods, and the bandit commander Mantis has a location written down here as well. A mistake he shall soon regret making. But first, we face the Crusher. A man clad in barrier armor ambushes me as I finish off the Ice Mage. Only an experienced mercenary could even hope to get their hands on such equipment. Plus, it seems he's as good at dodging fireballs as anyone could hope to be. Not a good matchup on this one. In the end, my affinity for the not fighting fair gave me the win. Mages do have some of the coolest spells. Mages also have certain methods of fighting that would probably not hold up by the Geneva Convention standards. Well, we soon make it back to town, but after this fiasco, I'm afraid our little to-do list has gotten even longer. Stopping by the inn for a quick drink, I overhear a bit of gossip regarding the Prince of Levant. He has been murdered. The only suspect is lost among the sandy dunes in Abrassar. Likely a problem we will need to solve ourselves when the time comes. For now, it's off to the south side of Edmerker Forest. Just before the Cabal Wind Temple in between the burning tree lies a single person. Who would risk camping alone in such a dangerous area except for Mantis the bandit captain himself? Our battle is short, to say the least, as a warrior such as this poses no threat to me. me. Spark is such a powerful tool in the hands of an esteemed sorcerer. Next, we make our way to the Burnt Outpost. One of the most dangerous enemies awaits us here, that being an obsidian elemental. Something about dodging fireballs and trying to cast magic simultaneously always trips me up. Well, it looks like the fire horses won't be much of an issue for me in this run. One cast of mana push inside Ice Sigil and Wind Sigil gives 2 projectiles. That combined with mana ward and fire-based enemies beware. Inside the crumbling outpost, we're ambushed by 2 bandits. Clearly the ones who blew up the archives. I show them no mercy. Which is another way of saying I threw fireballs at them. Kerouac and Risa Aberdeen are found here unharmed. We free both, letting them make their way back to town. Then as I make my way towards the door, I notice a small note left on the table there. It seems the assassination of the Levant Prince could be part of a plot to overthrow the king and queen. Seems I'm needed there sooner rather than later. Safely back in town, Risa explains we are now at war. She has no task for me at the moment, so I think it's time I deal with these assassins in person. On my way to Levant, I'm sure to stop by Roland. On his way to Berg, he found a nice helmet and piece of gold he wants us to have. I graciously accept, of course. Good to be back in the scorching desert of Abrassar. Off to the side, near this oasis, I notice a man clothed in Holy Mission attire. Upon questioning him, it's revealed that he is being framed for the prince's murder and is no member of the Holy Mission at all. A clever ruse indeed that I intend to uncover. His next meetup point was inside the old hive prison. Upon investigating the location myself, I find only the giant hive insects who inhabit these nests. As per usual, they infect me within seconds, which seems comically difficult to avoid at this point. Throwing down an additional fire sigil let me kite around the large fellow without getting caught in his tree trunk-sized arms. I love enemies who are weak to fire. Please make all enemies weak to fire from now on. Thank you in advance. Close to the wooden wall, a small item catches my eye. Another note mentioning the men over in Burnt Outpost. Sorry guys, those men are long dead and gone. No clue how it happened, but yeah, they can't help you anymore. In order to use my full power, I made a stop by the old Cabal Wind Towers to activate the Desert Wind Pylon. It seems the old ruins here are inhabited by a non-human occupant. Sigils really can be quite blinding at times, especially at bad angles. Considering how effective they are at dealing with squatters though, I'll let it slide. Once inside the Levant slums, I find one final note. It is official. We have enough evidence of this plot within Levant to do something about it. As much as I dislike Cyrene, she would be the one to talk to about these events. She asks for my help in squashing this little coup. And since when have I been one to turn down a good fight? Underneath the city, Cyrene apparently wanted me to do the work for her, as she more or less stands around. Emphasis on the more. And as I do her work, I notice a dark and bloodstained room off to the side. Baron Montgomery stands alone among his torture devices. The wind sigil placed behind me kind of tells him everything he needs to know. There may be a lot of gray area in this world, Baron, but you are pure evil. And I also want your stuff because money. Down below in this damp cavern, we confront Prince Pietro. He has killed his own brother and plans to do so to his parents as well. Cyrene arrests him, our majesties have him put to death, and that's one coup prevented if you don't mind me bragging. This has of course been enough time for the war to turn for the worst. Back in Berg, Risa explains that we need help, and we need it now. She suggests convincing the ash giants of the swamp to join our cause. With them, the war is as good as won. But we will need to be careful. A powerful enemy they could make, as if we don't have enough of those already. Finding myself in the Hallowed Marsh once again, it's the usual business. Get attacked by bandits, get attacked by dinos. Wish you weren't getting attacked by so many things, and hey, we made it to the Giants village. The merchant Goldbelly explains that this alliance will not come easy. Their leader is very traditional and not the biggest fan of humans. Hey, who is, am I right? High Lord Sire accuses us of wanting giants to solve all our problems. If he's willing to even consider this as an option, we must bring them some obsidian root that they can use for medicine. As you probably could have guessed, it's in the middle of the swamp, and in the middle of an alpha Tonosaur nest, no less. Yay, I get to fight monsters even the giants are afraid of. Terrific. But there are other things that can help us in these negotiations as well. Speaking with Goldbelly, we learn a little bit about their culture. He mentions that a human once studied them. The book he wrote can be found in an old storage shed. For some reason, the storage shed is like halfway across the swamp, where I have to actually cross the ooey gooey water itself. It pays to bring along curative potions, let me tell you. Inside the facility is a small book off to the side. It reads about how ash giants are exiled from their communities if they do something against their own people. They can be forgiven, but only twice. After that, they're on their own. Which means any lone giant we find out in different regions truly is all on his own. Might be why they're all so aggressive. After leaving the storage shed, I started making my way towards the large tree in the middle of the swamp. As I made my way there, some bandits decided to ambush me. In my haste to avoid them, I accidentally fell off this massive cliff and into the swampy water below. Somehow, by the grace of Lat no doubt, I was not entirely dead, extremely wounded and poisoned, but not dead. A quick health potion and then sprint out of this water. Let's try not to run backwards anymore. Scary moment. I can almost swear I didn't need a change of undies after this. But of course, the terrifying encounters have only just begun. Outside the tree, guarding its entrance, is an alpha taunosaur, one of the most feared predators in this land for their raw strength and fire breath, which in some way is funny, as they seem to be taken out quite quickly by fire. I guess it's sometimes the thing you live by most that takes you out. Now inside the reptilian lair, there's no time to lose. We must face another alpha guarding their eggs, and I made the one mistake you don't do here, that being getting 2 taunosaurs on me at the same time. One thing to make note of during this run is stamina management. You may notice that I have an abnormal amount of stamina for a mage. This is largely for 2 reasons. One being that I use a luxury tent instead of the mage tent. Negative 20 stamina cost goes a long way. Number 2 is that I only have 2 points given up to the ley line. Really, we didn't give up all that much. Feels really balanced out, especially with the mana regen. Well, would you look at that? The root is hidden in the very back by the nests. As it turns out, there are 3 roots to be found in this cave. You only need 1 of them, but I managed to roll off a ledge here to collect a second as well. Not exactly sure where the third is, but poking around any longer could have seen me become something's dinner. So I skedaddled. Running back down into the swamp leads me to an ambushed campsite. Some holy missionaries were murdered here, and I intend to find out why. Mofat claims people have gone missing like this for some time now. Perhaps a conspiracy against the holy mission is taking place. Spending 50 silver, he can teach us the blessed boon for lightning damage and defense, which should be the last one we need. Alamon the philosopher claims to have escaped from the men who trampled their campsite. They were headed to a mountain not far from there. Another bloody task to take care of, although the giants seem more important at the moment. The Cardinal actually has some more info on the giants as they tried to reach out to them some time ago. Apparently the giants believe their ancestors lived on the red moon, but after killing their world, the moon turned red. A single stone of ash fell down to create this world, and thus the giants were born of ash once again. With several sources of useful info in mind, we set off for negotiations. On my way, I find a giant of all things. He doesn't really last long and does drop a heart garnet. Now, we already saved one of these from the Trog cave back in Chersonese, but they are a common drop that could come up soon. Back in front of High Lord Sire, we begin talks of peace between our 2 nations. Using info from Goldbelly, we explain that the Blue Chamber will let these giants help decide important issues. They can rule their own land still, and our own tribal laws are mere recommendations. Info from the historian's book appeases to the giants' rule of exiling, making them see that we have much in terms of common ground. After explaining that Alat isn't a god at all like the Dusk Father of the Giants is, but rather the destroyer of the Scourge, they are no longer threatened by our religion. We give them the roots they asked for, and then before finishing up, throw in a giant's heart garnet. He thanks us for bringing the Ashborn home. His life can now endure because of our good deed. And thus, we have collected every clue and item needed for the Ash Giants to join our cause. They will in fact help us win this war, and I myself am granted blood from the very giant himself. This increases my total health by 40, which is one of the main reasons I chose Blue Chamber to begin with. We're gonna need extra health for hardcore obviously, but for another passive we get later on as well. Fail these negotiations and you don't get the health passive, plus have to fight the giant. Let's just say doing your research really pays off. As dangerous as the swamp can be, we once again need to cross the entire thing. I don't even have my wind sigil equipped right now because we aren't able to use it here. So after what felt like 12 different engagements with the very swamp itself, we dodge off a cliff, then through some water and activate the swamp wind totem. Now that all our tools are back in the tool belt, we set off for Deadroot's cave, a second large tree in the corner of this region, very secluded and very protected by the wildlife. Once inside, I picked off a few bandits with hexes and began a battle with another Immaculate. As I had hoped, the lightning blast is exactly what I needed to make these treacherous hunters mere ants along my path. He can barely stand up before another blast is headed his way. Other than that, this dungeon was highly uneventful. Read some notes here and there, defeat the marsh bandits, and read some more notes. On the final letter, there's a key with the face of a taunosaur on it. I wonder where that goes. Behind the secret wall, we find the last 2 scourge beasts being held here. Members of Sorbor Academy were trying to mind control them as a sort of green army. Not on my watch. Wind Sigil is actually my favorite item of magic in all of Outward. I think it's the simplest to use, packs the most power overall, and not requiring stones is a gift from Alat himself. The trouble with some enemy types is they really want to stay at a medium distance away from you. These smaller illuminators are the main culprit. A little baiting from way back in the room and it's nighty-night to the corrupted monster. We gather the last info needed, pick up the gorgeous but also useless glowstone backpack, and get the heck out of here. Turning this info about the Sorbor Academy over to the head of Monsoon makes him hire more guards to protect the people. After a long journey back to Berg, we give the same info to Matthias, who will deal with the culprits personally. We tell Risa that the giants are going to help us win this war. She replies that many tribes are already sending more warriors, so things are looking up. Our efforts are rewarded with 3 days off. I use them all to sleep because what's better than 60 some hours of rest? Risa now asks me if I would like to join the Cryptea, an ancient group of elite warriors who protect a set of memories. These many memories of past members hold great power and help guide the collective. Unfortunately, a dark lich known as the Red Lady once attempted to siphon control of these memories. She was defeated and cast out, but her descendants live on to carry out her mission. The Cryptea hunt down descendants of the Red Lich and off them before they can be used for evil, even if they don't know their descendants yet. Yeah, not exactly the best thing to be doing, but it does keep the world safe. As we the player know from other run-throughs, the Scarlet Lady is quite devious, probably the only true chaotic evil villain in Outward. Even Roland has been inducted into this illustrious club as he didn't really have a choice with those blood debts weighing him down. Defeat a dangerous lich and help Roland at the same time? How could I say no? As a member of the Cryptea, I need to go unlock mana in order to commune with the ancestral memories. Unlock mana, you say? Yeah, I don't think that's gonna be a problem considering, factors. But even though the blue power already resides within us, Roland may need our help getting some himself. And so we set off for the Conflux Mountain of Chersonese once again. Upon reaching the blue chamber corridors, I realized something. There is no way Roland managed to make it through this maze unharmed, or without getting lost for that matter. Sure enough, we find him cowering under a mana mantis. Conjure defeats the monster instantly, which I'll talk about what that does later. For now, just consider Conjure plus Wind Sigil the auto-delete button. Roland is injured from the infused beast, but it seems we have saved him just in time. We tell him to make his way through without our escort, as that will give him more confidence. While he did make it safely to the ley line this time, he's also done something very wrong. Roland, being Roland, has taken his entire life force and given it up for a massive mana. He feels awful and can barely stand, but he's also able to conjure a massive ethereal sword with no catalyst at all. We tell him he's gained loads of magical power instead of calling him a moron. Yes, sometimes quests are more clear than you might initially realize. Before we both head back to Berg, there's somewhere Roland would like to go if we don't mind tagging along. On the beach outside Cierzo sits Starfish Cave, the place we can only access after the tide has gone down or at nighttime. Once again, Roland has found himself no match for the outside world. We summon our fire sigil in water, which you wouldn't think would work, but this is magic after all, not science. After cooking up some shrimp, Roland tells me him and Yazand lost their dad's old compass here when they were kids. He's come back for it since it's all he has left to remember his father of. We make sure to tell him it was worth it before each traveling our separate ways back to Berg. This side part of the main quest is small and somewhat insignificant in the grand scheme of things. But really think about it, and Roland is you, a mere human with debts to pay but no way to pay them. He tries to get stronger but just can't manage to get it right. In a way, Roland is taking the same path as us, but finding it far more difficult. And getting him a memoir of his father could be just the thing to turn his luck around. Upon returning, Gabriella tasks us with killing a special green shell horror. We need to prove our worth to the Cryptea, and what better way to do that than fight the most dangerous beast possible? Excellent initiation idea, Gabriella. Just excellent. Before leaving, we hear from Roland that something is wrong with his mana. He can't quite control it as his ghost sword gets all bendy when he has it out. No worry, Roland, you're just getting older, buddy. Happens to the best of us. Talaron, the blue tattooed guy up near the town blacksmith, can craft him a trinket to help focus his power. We bring him blue sand, a mana stone, and an emerald or ruby that I have stored in my chest because that's what I do. I hoard valuable stuff. Talaron crafts up a magical trinket, making Roland feel much more in control of his magic sword. We tell him to head out, as together we shall take this challenge head on. After reaching the ancient building, we find Roland already battling the beast in a corrupted room. Our friend is almost cut down right before our very eyes. Luckily, a couple fireballs gain the creature's attention, giving Roland a chance to finish the behemoth off. That was a close one, but it looks like me and Roland are alive to see another day. Tell him he did a great job in that fight, which he really did this time, and take the green chitin of this decaying corpse back to Gabriella. She officially initiates us both into the Cryptea Collective. We are now secret ninja wizards. Gabriella asks me to fetch Julius from the town inn, but it seems he's dead. In some sort of confusion, he tried to stab Sigurd Battleborn. And that really isn't something anyone should do. It would seem a girl connected to the Scarlet Lady has made her way here. We find our way to the necropolis, battling ghosts along the way. Gabriella can be found here exhausted from her battle. The memories seem agitated and have barred our way in. We need to burn incense at 2 altars to ease their minds. While I do that, let's go over Conjure for a second. If Wind Sigil has been placed down, you can use Conjure to cast a large bolt of lightning in the center of that green circle. You can cast Conjure really anywhere in the general vicinity, even several meters away. That lightning will still cast whether you're in the sigil or not, making it an exceptional trap as it deals some of the highest elemental damage of any attack in the game. Just zapow! Death from above. I bring this up now because it almost ended the entire run. The Ancestral General guards these altars. He's an undead warrior of magic with control over several smaller skeleton minions. I set up the perfect bait to deal with all 4 of them in one go, but didn't manage to activate Conjure soon enough, leading to a ghost and 2 skeletons stun locking me in a corner with no way out. Dodge spamming kept me alive barely, and a few panicked moments later I was free. Cramped areas are the bane of any outward experience. With all the living dead finally at peace, we collect the greasy ferns held inside these halls and burn them to the spirits, calming them down. With the barrier now down, we sprint on through, eager to assist Roland in saving the memories. But alas, we are too late. The Descendant has already added her spirit to the altar and corrupted the memories. Roland thinks he may be able to separate the red lich minion from the blue memories with his mana sword, but it's incredibly risky. This is it. Roland's moment. We hype him up once more, telling him we're worried about him, which to be honest isn't that reassuring. Roland plants his sword into the memories as a loud scream breaks the air. Then moments later, all is calm, and standing before us is no longer Roland, but a creature made up of memories and Roland's physical body. Our dear friend has sacrificed himself to the memories, saving them for the future. He is no longer living, but one with the ancestors, creating a new lich powerful enough to defend against the Red Lady, forever known as the Whispering Bones. For helping Roland out along his journey, we are rewarded Ancestors' Memories, a passive skill granting us plus 25 max mana overall. A sad day to lose a friend, but also a day to celebrate his bravery and sacrifice. May he always be remembered among the Cryptea as a hero. As we turn around, you may notice the large blue compasswood tree growing down in these dark tunnels. With the compasswood staff in hand, you can interact here, turning the red fire staff into a blue cold-based staff, increasing its negative mana cost from 20 to 25 and granting us a new cool look. No clue what this tree is, how it's here, or why it can do this. I just know you can, and more negative mana cost is everything to a mage. Risa thanks us for our work in stopping this catastrophe. We are rewarded some gold as she heads down to speak with the new Blue Guardian. With all the dangerous work I've been put through so early in my Blue Chamber experience, Risa decides to grant me a much safer mission. Simply make my way to all the leaders of the Blue Chamber villages and convince them to agree to peace talks. Sounds easy enough anyway. Sigurd I already knew would not like this idea. He was bred for battle, and battle is all he wants. A good beating should put him in his place, as my many sigils await there in the background. A mighty warrior Sigurd may be, but no one stands up to the power of multiple sigils. Like, literally he couldn't stand up. The circles do so much stagger with each of my casts that he can't get close to me. Should have just turned around a little bit and looked for any magic before we started, buddy. They were there the whole time, but no, you still wanted to fight. With him out of the way, we now make the long walk to Montcalm Bandit Camp in Chersonese. The leader there, Rastarte, is in fact part of the Blue Chamber, even if they tend to be more like a group of thieves. The options you get here are very similar. One wrong word and he won't agree, which doesn't really do much other than you don't get a perfect success. Somehow I managed to convince him to agree with peace talks by selecting options 1, 2, 2, and then 1. He essentially thinks the ghosts can protect his tribe from the heroic kingdom. We convince him that the ghosts will just wait around until one side wins and consume the other. He's a good leader for his people, just a little too obsessed with ghosts. We now make our way through from Chersonese to the Hallowed Marsh to convince the giants. They instantly accept as they fully trust a fellow blood brother. Making my way to Monsoon, I enter the chambers of Alat where all the heads of our tribes are meeting for the peace talks. Levant will give up its firearms to the Blue Chamber. Alat will save Calixa, the Queen of Levant, and everyone is happy. Except when Alat expunges the corruption from the Queen, an entire horde of Scourge will invade town, forcing us to defend it. Can't forget about that part. For perfect success in this quest, we are rewarded Peacemaker's Elixir and a single Czar Stone. Consuming the Elixir grants us plus 20 max health, stamina, and mana as a passive skill, greatly increasing our effectiveness overall. And to war I go. This is the first time in this hardcore series where I completed both of the parallel quests, that being the Prince's Murder and the plot to control Scourge Beasts using kidnapped members of the Holy Mission. Doing both together grants not just more warriors to help here at the end, but way more warriors to help. So many, in fact, that I don't need to lift a finger for all the monsters to be taken down. Obviously, I help when I can, but they honestly don't need me at all. The first duo goes down with one lightning blast. The second beast dies as I reach him, and Butcher of Men got outplayed by a mere ice sigil. Cast whenever I can as he's distracted by all the others. Turn around and watch as the last shell horror is cut down by these merry men. Very anticlimactic for a final fight, all because you did things correctly. Try doing it wrong. Trust me, there's a lot more to fight here. Risa gives me complete freedom, seeing as there are no more major tasks for me to complete. I am rewarded the Crimson Armor set to deal with cold temperatures or beasts. And there you have the Blue Chamber faction quest fully completed in hardcore. I purchase a house in town for 500 silver, then take a long-deserved rest, having saved the world twice, stopping the Red Lich from returning to rampage across the land, and ending the futile war tearing these nations apart. All in a day's work, fellow adventurers, all in a day's work. With adventure number 1 completed, we need to hunt down the rest of our gear. Inside the Spire of Light, there are a number of electric minions to clear out as usual, as well as several levers to pull. The first can be found under the first ramp. A second sits behind where you exit from your first teleport, and a final lever can be pulled behind the Gold Lich's throne. The minions here, being golems, are again for whatever reason still able to burn, making Fire Sigil as strong as ever even without our old fire staff. With all 3 pulled, head to the bottom of this tower and through a door on the side. A much larger lever unlocks that teleporter there where we can take on a more aggressive minion, this one being a melee version with these sort of prawn thingies. I noticed his impact was really high, forcing me to back up instead of block, but other than that, he went down easily, which of course he was guarding yet another lever, this one being the last we need to pull. With all the blockers cleared away, we could teleport up to a hidden legacy chest. Both guardians meant to keep me from it were kind of preoccupied with something shiny, I guess, and that gave me plenty of time to set up. This was supposed to be a challenge, guys. If you aren't even gonna try, well, actually no, I won't complain. This is as good as it gets. Inside this legacy chest, my ancestors have left an arcane robe, same as what I wear right now. Through the years, it has aged into a white arcane robe, gaining more physical resist, several damage bonuses, and an extra negative 5% skill cooldown. Not to mention, it matches our white headdress and boots far better. I was also sure to grab the Pillar Great Hammer secretly stashed inside the wall next to me. To sell for good coin, of course. Now in Enmerker Forest, I made my way to the Vigil Pylon, protected by a single elite beast golem who meets the raw power of lightning. This is easily the most satisfying magic to cast of all time. Inside the damp hall, we pull a lever revealing a secret room in the back. Negative cooldown actually comes in handy for Ice Sigil, even though I didn't plan around it. With the Ice Staff, each Frost Blast is remarkably powerful and now comes back fast enough that I don't feel like I'm always waiting around for it. This is an old dominion of the Red Lady. How she gained control of such a large area, we may never know. She placed a very intricate puzzle here to keep out visitors. You essentially touch a gravestone and it teleports you to the next section. Touch the wrong one and you start all over. Each ghost is a complete joke, as hexes can take them down before I even reach their area, which was funny to watch as they did their best to defend their master's dwelling. The pattern is left at the first fork you take, straight at the second fork you take, and at the final fork things get weird. You need to make sure the far side of this domain does not have a red moon showing. Each teleport takes it away and then makes it reappear over and over. Teleport between the last few headstones until it is a moon. Then teleport back over to your original location. Now when you take the correct spot, it will be a moon that you can interact with. Actually, this is quite simple, although hard to explain. Probably one of the more unique puzzles you can find in Outward. Upon touching the red moon, you are teleported up to an elevated platform where an obsidian elemental and Burning Man will ambush you. Coincidentally, my armor choices with boons makes me pretty close to having fire immunity. I think it's about 80% resistance, so we take damage, but not much. Although the horse's melee attacks hurt. What the heck happened here? They perfectly caught me off guard. That wasn't great. Anyway, our third legacy chest can be found here containing a white arcane hood. Being the upgrade of an arcane hood, this has negative 10% cooldown, nice defenses for mage armor, and some damage bonuses. Helmet and chest equipped together make for the perfect mage pairing that almost cannot be beaten. One last gravestone to interact with and we're out of this weird dimensional trap. Now off to the desert. Making my way through a long and relatively safe valley, we are spit out at the entrance to the Slide dungeon. Inside, we can utterly embarrass this poor rock mantis who is just minding his business and snatch up the old Levant key. It unlocks a gate on the other side of this cave where we pull a lever to lower the water level. Ah man, I forgot to grab the ornate chest before doing that. After dispatching the few desert bandits guarding this place, I head down and unlock a dark prison. That prison was holding a shell horror, who I was ready for because I have indeed played this game once or twice before. He feels the full might of a wind sigil as I combo between every skill possible. That, my friends, is the true fun of a mage right there. He wasn't even given a chance, the poor monster. Pulling 2 more levers, which I just now realize there's a lot of when dealing with legacy chests, we can collect our final ancestral gear. Passed down from a blue wide hat, we find the red wide hat. Ultimately a little better than the white hat because it has negative stamina cost and ice damage bonus. Plus red fashion is better. We decided this on the go, so it must be correct. Through the back of the slide lies what remains of old Levant. First losing the war, then losing the second war, now they really don't have many legs left to stand on. We are looking for Luke the Pearlsand, who is not hard to find at all this time. It seems fireballs are having a hard time connecting with this fellow, and oof, does he hit hard. Let me run back and get this wind sigil down just in the nick of time. Much better. Lightning explosions to the face, those can't miss. Ooh, and an elegant conjure strike is landed to all but finish things off. If we had taken one more hit there though, we would have been in for some serious trouble. Somehow I always forget this regular human mercenary is far stronger than he looks. Back inside the slide we head lower down where the water level used to cover. Preparing ahead of time, this shrimp got one-shotted. Nice. In fact, at this point, I was using Ice Sigil from my inventory because I had truly run out of places for my magic. Which kinda sucks, but does help me save on ice stones that are harder to find, because you'll typically use what's right in front of you first. It's safe to say the Executioner bug was not a threat. No, he was, much less intimidating than usual. I think we can all admit that. And you know what? Let's test our strength against a Manticore for the first time of this run. I avoid these guys like the plague as they're both strong and lightning fast. Okay, so sigil stacking is just straight up not fair. There's so much damage here, yes, but the impact is what's really surprising me. Even the stronger enemy types can't get close to me as I block until the perfect moment to stun lock them. We are simply doing too much at one time for the game to handle it. In town, I realized I didn't have the house here yet. 500 silver later and I have a very nice place to rest. Down in the city's underpassage, we can take care of Bloody Alexis, a silver-armored mercenary who fights dirty. My main concern here was not falling and perishing to gravity. Mage gameplay is easy to use for the most part, but then there are separate occurrences where lock-on actively works against you. If locked on, you cannot move around edges correctly, so good luck juggling lock-on and lock-off 9 times in a row. And my sigil ran out. Dang it, these don't last long enough, dude. Hexes do feel a lot more like cheating than sigils, but man am I glad I have them as backup. Pop goes the magic and all your problems are gone. On my way to the Red Rose Cave, I ran into what can only be described as an army. Several large bugs decided to chase me down, forcing me to enlist the assistance of a nearby giant. I always enjoy this aspect of the game. Enemies are foes of yours, yes, but also they just exist in the world for anything to attack them. Giants seem to be more than capable as the Yellow Priest took down everything that came his way. Too bad for him, I was placing hexes during all this, so his victory was short-lived. Sandrose Cave houses a scourge beast fed by fire, the Sandrose Horror. You might think with my current performance that there's nothing left to scare me. Surprisingly, I am nowhere near capable of taking on the main challenges. Without one specific upgrade we can't access yet, my mage is a goner should we fight a legitimate boss. So while we clean up the last couple mini-bosses, let's talk shop. After the faction quest, it's typical to go finish Rust and Vengeance. What you may have noticed for this run is that the Long Train Dungeon quest has not actually started for me. This is because I didn't go to Harmattan after my faction quest had begun. I went before. Instead, we're gonna take on the new Sirocco town building first. It's there we can find several upgrades for our sigils. Oh, it's definitely risky considering how tough that volcanic region can be, but the payoff should be worth it. With Sunfall Axe in my possession from reading these stone tablets, we set off for Berg. It's important that I buy each of the 4 runes from the Rune Sage teacher. Blue and purple together grants runic protection or physical defense, which is my main weakness. Then after purchasing an enchanting kit just in case, we make our way to the town inn. A courier stands waiting with a letter for me. Risa wants me to go assist in the building of old Sirocco as it's been torn apart by seismic activity. The ancestral memories predict grave danger is stirring in the Caldera region. We must be prepared for anything. And off we go to Caldera. Our most important task at the moment is to always be prepared. So before anything else, I make my way to the region's wind altar, activating my magic. Directly behind this spot is a hut containing the primal ritualist. He can teach us miasmic tolerance for 50 silver, which adds status resistance to our build if we have a tent buff active, which like 90% of the time I do because stamina is my jam. Next, we head into old Sirocco where a volcano has all but destroyed the place. 3 workers stand nearby, throwing their leaders into hot lava as soon as I approach. These 3 are rebels who overthrew their corrupt government. They need to rebuild someplace else for obvious reasons, as I oversee the construction. After they all leave for the mines or what will be called New Sirocco, I make my way down into the belly of the mountain to meet with a new enemy, a Scarlet Emissary. These demons of the Scarlet Lich are why I wanted the Ice Staff. They are incredibly powerful, with high damage and massive amounts of HP. Ice Sigil is my best tool for fighting them, especially since I still don't have Blood Sigil at my side. Good news is this matchup is more than doable. Bad news is my sigils do not last long enough to take one down all the way. Unfortunately, they can be very aggressive, forcing you out of the sigils and wasting precious time. Hexes will play a big part in finishing these fiery devils off. I just need stamina to avoid their razor-sharp claws, which at the moment seems like we don't have any issues with that at all. And look at that, a petrified organs right off the bat. Maybe town building won't be so bad this time. Once I find my way to New Sirocco, we get to work. 3 houses are built for the workers to stay in as construction takes place. Next, we build a woodcutter's lodge for lumber, mason's workshop for stone, and hunting lodge for food. I couldn't quite finish the 3 workshops right away, but at least they are started. You know what time it is. We need money and supplies for this new town, and Cassandra here didn't prepare for this at all. My favorite spot to get some cash is Steam Bath Tunnels. The giants here drop health potions consistently, and there are several chests inside the cave that could drop expensive glass weapons. In the back, you can also find a cooled room of Chalcedony where the Caligray hero resides. The Red Lion Ape and his brother take you on as a duo. Preparing my sigils correctly was easy enough, but then neither brute would get close enough to me. It's almost like they knew I had a timer counting down. Fire Sigil is still the shining star as it can always deal good damage as long as the opponent isn't literally made of fire. And once all my circles run out, we hex away just out of his reach. It's really nice that Immolate still produces a damage boost for the burning status, because even after disappearing, the Fire Sigil still manages to be my best friend. Making my way to the Grotto of Chalcedony, I'm not actually that afraid of this region. My elemental defenses are high enough to give me a nice cushion, and most enemies here deal elemental damage. It's the gargoyles and Scarlet Emissaries that I fear. A quartz elemental guards this ice palace. I decided against using Ice Sigil, and I think you can figure out why on this one. Again, we're sure to stun lock the poor horse, not even allowing him to be given a chance. Yes, the extra cooldown does affect the 5 seconds on Spark, and yes, it's kinda crazy. Time to test our metal against the first gargoyle just to see how bad this is gonna be. Dodging those sword combos is not particularly easy, but wow, my damage is strong enough for only a few attacks to see him decommissioned. Let's not get complacent against these stone constructs, but I definitely don't need to be afraid of them anymore. Oily Cavern was my third destination as I hunt for samples. What surprised me most about this run was the most consistent challenge I had to deal with was Caligrays. They have like the least amount of health of most enemies in Caldera, but they just don't let up. With ranged lightning balls, pouncing melees, uncanny speed, and typically showing up in duos, every encounter was harder than it should have been. Hexes turned out to be more effective than sigils for them, as I was safer and could more easily back away if I made a mistake. Some of the sigil skills animations are a tad too long if you don't time things perfectly. Also, check out this Caligray staff. Heck, the stats on it aren't even bad at all, but man is it way too big. Ironically, Mimatours, or the anteater elephant mole creatures, are not bad at all. Conjure's extremely powerful, we already mentioned that, but what you don't realize until you use it is the lightning strike is incredibly inconsistent. At times it hits anything near your sigil, other times it won't hit something clearly halfway in the sigil. What I noticed was the wider the opponent, the easier it connected. And against these beasts, I don't even know how it could miss. Every time I play this game, people tell me to check the Friendly Immaculate's cave for samples. Oh hey, I get them there all the time, maybe you will too. I have been to this hidden rest stop like 1,000 times, the samples are never here for me. At least we can say hi to the Friendly Immaculate, that's kinda nice. And since the Ark is right here, why don't we jump in and poke around for a bit? Or maybe we shouldn't have, because this went south within seconds. The Ark is a moving contraption that docks at different stations around Caldera. The enemies inside piloting it are Caldigreys. But not just one Caldigray, not even 2, 3, or 4. There's an army of them in here, and half the time some show up outside as well. Oh, and I forgot to mention these cavemen are almost immune to lightning. Definitely not a massive issue at all or anything. They honestly had me, because more showed up after my sigil disappeared. Stepping outside for a breather, I was met with more chasing me around in the dark. Thank goodness I keep potions in my pocket, or this could have been the end of the run right here. Hexes again allow me to clean things up, but I took this as a warning to stay as far away from the Ark as possible. Back in town, we helped work for a week to finish up the 3 workshops. Upon finishing the job, Dorian informs me we need fertilizer for the Ambrain farms, a plant Caldera folk use to survive the immense heat. An enormous nest of Mimatours looms over the region where we can hopefully sneak in and out with a Mimatour egg. Or we could just go in blasting, that's typically way more my style. There is seriously nothing more fun than correctly timing Conjure. I'm calling it right now. The most fun thing in the game, hands down. But of course, our main target is the Matriarch Mimatour guarding her eggs. At this point, I'm rocking the Arcane Hood and Chest with White Priest boots. This gives me an excellent boost in skill cooldown, near infinite mana, and high defenses to all elements. The one issue I ran into is mage armor has a very low amount of stagger resistance, which greatly affects how long I can block. Against larger creatures such as this, a dodge is needed with the block almost every single time. It's tricky and keeps you moving out of your sigils. Once you kind of get into a groove with it though, you know to dodge just as that white bar down below gets to half. With the Mama Mimatour defeated, we can collect a single egg from her nest, being sure to not disrupt their ecosystem. They are just native animals after all. But just an egg isn't exactly enough. We now need to fertilize it in the sulfuric caverns. Typically, this is a dangerous cave as you're forced to deal with Boros and Madis. Well, the hippos go down pretty fast as long as you're quick enough with your casts, and Madis are surprisingly easy. Their main weakness is lightning, and clearly they have no resistance to fire. Both together, and it's probably the easiest way I've ever dealt with a floating jellyfish. Like I've said a few times, the challenging aspect with sigils is getting them down. Know where enemies tend to be, and you can always be ready. It's when you have to throw one down as 3 aggressive creatures chase you that makes a fight impossible. After prepping my circle of death, I speak with the nobles blocking my path. Unsurprisingly, they want to kill me for helping the rebels. I mean, fair, but did you not see the massive amount of magic I just placed down? Melee opponents are so focused on Unga Bunga-ing that they go down before I can even blink. Archers are another story, as they always manage to dodge projectiles. Hit Mana Ward just before casting some magic though, and you're immune just long enough to take away his mortal soul. Bad guys, 0. And good guys? Well, I have too many points racked up to count, actually. Never mind. We dip the egg into a gassy blue pool and it fertilizes in seconds. The Ambrain farms can now produce crops and I can build more specialized buildings. My luck with the samples had been subpar thus far, so I had Evangeline go get me a digested mana stone. With that, I crafted the food store. While that was under construction, I learned a relatively easy way to get sample items quickly. You hunt down Scarlet Emissaries. Obviously, farming out materials from the strongest monsters and outward doesn't sound all that efficient. However, they have a chance to drop some of the sample items, and since sigils were dealing with them nicely, I decided to give this method a try. One can be found in River of Red, a cave filled with lava near the more unstable section of Caldera. This one didn't really drop anything, but there was at least a sample in the cave. Another can be found roaming outside of Old Sirocco, near the entrance or outside the back exit. While checking for him, you can stop in the lower section of Old Sirocco itself to take down the one we defeated before. He happened to drop an extremely rare amethyst geode, which you often need for building. The final emissary was out by a bridge you can let down connecting more of the map. He dropped Flash Moss, so 2 out of 3 dropped a different item. That really isn't bad at all. And we were able to get some nice chest loot on the way. If you're willing to fight them, it's definitely more fun than collecting samples. I can absolutely verify that. So the food store is now finished up, and next I would like the town hall. Well, the leaders want one, I'm just kind of forced to make it for them. Then when that's finished up, we can construct an enchanting guild. This seemed to be enough progress at the moment because Yosef decided to ask more of me. He wants me to take a cold Chalcedony rock into the volcano volcano and charge it with heat from their forges. Since you can't take your backpack with you, I had to allocate a few things to my pocket in case I got into trouble. Then it's off to jump into a volcano. The basic plan I always use here is just run. Most enemies in Outward are optional and will lose interest if you get far enough past them. Gargoyles are tricky as they sit in locations you can't avoid, but a movement speed potion all but nullifies him. Now in the heart of the volcano, we drop the stone running headfirst into a cluster of fiery foes. The Scarlet Lady's minions have infiltrated the mountain and don't seem all that pleased to see me. A gastrocene in the back will take them out if you can get them to engage each other, but that plan backfired when the snail decided not to fight all three of them at once. On fire and in a panic, I ran behind a corner to pop Wind Sigil. Still taking damage since I never planned to do any fighting here, things have not gone the way I wanted them to. I clean up the horse with a few spark blasts and shamefully head back to my rock. Stupid snail, this is clearly all your fault. Do your job a whole lot better next time, will ya? Interacting with the charging station, our Chalcedony rock is filled with heat and fully charged. I return it to Yosef and get back to my day job. With the enchanting building now up and running, I find out it's completely useless. Apparently the enchantment I want requires an expanded library upgrade. That only cost me an arm and a leg to get set up. No, it's totally fine. After days of waiting, we can now slot our staff onto the tablet there, place some flash moss into the pedestal, and enchant it with Inheritance of the Past. This adds 3% movement speed and 0.1 mana regen to my staff. Very important for the tougher encounters, so I literally have infinite mana to engage with. Since remember, we already had passive 0.34 mana regen, adding up to 0.44 now. A lot more than it sounds just from the numbers, honestly. For the next 4 chapters of this story, I hit a bit of bad luck. Don't worry, I'm gonna skip all the sample gathering. I don't even want to relive that. Let's just say Cassandra the Mage could not get the correct sample materials no matter how hard she tried. Progress would be made, but it would be an uphill battle from now on. An important upgrade I needed was the stockpile blueprint. This increases the wood, food, and stone amount you can hold for better buildings. After that, I upgraded the food store to provide me free food for every week, which is such an important upgrade as you get the best buffs from these foods. After over 6 different encounters with Scarlet Emissaries, each ending in my victory of course, because magic is king, Evangeline needs my help. The Ember Heart must be moved from its current location in the volcano over to New Sirocco, but the only one strong enough to do such a thing is the Djinn, and he hates pretty much all humans. The nobles have had some way to control him in the past, so we head out to find us a traitor. Caligrays are often fond of capturing nobles, leading me back to the Ark where I almost perished before. Inside we slay yet another army, although this time it goes much better. Prepare for the worst, and the worst will never happen. Down in the jail cell, these brutes have captured Edward Orville, son of the Chamber Lord or leader of Old Sirocco. Since I already knew what was coming, I prepared wildly. Sigils placed down, buffs all in order, and dialogue spammed to not waste valuable time. As I snatch the pendant used to control a Djinn from his neck, the Scarlet Lady turns him into an emissary. How the heck would you handle this guy if you didn't already know he was showing up? Just imagine trying to place 4 sigils and activate all your buffs while a literal demon chases you down. Not gonna happen. Even correctly set up, he was a handful, as the tight spacing of this room gave me 0 wiggle room. At this point, we have become very familiar with fighting Scarlet Emissaries, which definitely helped out in the long run. Now if we can make it to the Djinn himself. This genie resides in the, oh hey look, the meteor's just starting to turn hot red. I wonder what that could mean. The genie resides deep under the oil refinery we rummaged through at the start of this journey. Good time to stock up on more thick oil, and there is one last lever to pull. 2 Madis graciously agree to fight a gargoyle for me. This one ended up being pretty close. Each actually took out each other as I attempted to get involved. Open up the Djinn's location with the lever here, and there he is. Basically, the Djinn doesn't want to help me because the nobles tortured him and his Caligray friends in the past. Sorry to say we can't stop to read any of that because we can't waste precious sigil time. Yep, nope, this is gonna be a problem. For most of Outward, enemies are aggressive towards you, meaning they always enter sigils. Because the Djinn is a mage like me, however, he's always backing up, turning a really cool fight into a boring slog as I was forced to hex him to death. I guess you now get to see why I didn't choose hexes as my main source of damage. They're really easy to apply, can deal massive damage every few seconds, and this isn't even their full power because yet another skill, Rupture, makes them even more ridiculous. Unlike sigils though, you don't get any combos. No unique combination of skills to create stagger and openings more often. Hexes become more or less the sniper of magic. Don't get me wrong, they're incredibly fun and strong when used for pure damage, but typically I find it more fun to bounce hexes off of melee or totems, and would anyone really want to see me rupture every single enemy in the game? Well, some of you probably do want to see that actually, but you get my point. Second phase, our small friend turns himself huge, and now the sigils are back in. In this form, the Djinn can't move around quickly at all, so as long as we back up from time to time, he'll stay near enough to explode on repeat. But darn it, we still don't have enough of a timer on these things. About time we fixed that, I think. But for now, it's hex, 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 as he struggles to do anything to me at that distance. Oh, but look at this, I got him with a perfect conjure. And I did it again, let's go! Keep sitting there in prime position, buddy, yeah, that's it. You know what, that was worth all the time hexing just to get a couple cool moments like this. After the good beatdown I gave him, the Djinn agrees to move the Ember Heart over to New Sirocco. Evangeline agrees to destroy the pendant tethering him after the deed is done, as he's probably suffered enough. Finally, we have enough space in town for an arena building. While that undergoes construction, we set up another house for the workers down below and hunt down additional funds because I am indeed broke as per usual. After some time spent looting chests across the volcanic plain, I decided it was time to take on the arena. Heading over to a very desolate and mostly empty part of Caldera, we find the Caligre's own personal sparring arena. Ask the leader to enter, and so it begins. Round 1, we face 2 ice enemies, a frost beetle and an ice snail. Sounds pretty easy since fire should counter them hard? Well, not exactly. My fire sigil was having an issue where the fireballs were exploding on an invisible barrier in front of me. I guess I placed it on the edge of that inner circle, and nothing was getting through. Turns out this fight was magic projectile galore, as each was cutting off entire sections of the arena. Gastrocines are not typically all that difficult with magic, but you really do need to build up a sizable amount of damage before they're even scratched. Not the best first round, I must admit. Hopefully things get better from here on out. For round 2, I managed to do something cool. If you place sigils after round 1 and sprint to the Elder for another fight, they'll still be active. While this was indeed cool, they didn't last more than a few seconds once I got in the fight. Thought I'd kind of broken this here, but they pulled an Uno reverse on me. It's weird because the entire game I can fully prepare for and then instantly drop whatever I'm facing. But in these more arena type fights, similar to the Djinn earlier, I can't prep at all. Once the enemies engage, there's never any downtime to place down magic even if I have the stones packed away in my pocket. This is one of the reasons we did Caldera first rather than last. This specific problem completely kills any progress we can make once legitimate boss fights start showing up. It will very soon get a lot better, but first it needs to get far worse for that to happen. Round 3, I found you can throw hexes at the trapped monsters without engaging the barrier keeping you in. Take out the Caligre with ease, and now correctly prep for the gargoyle. We are finally back to complete and utter dominance on the battlefield. Round 3 of all things was the easy one. What backwards kind of run is this? Now's a good time as any to head back into the volcano and hunt down the volcanic gastrocine. Well, this one really wasn't even fair. He did try at least to stay in the fight, but it didn't really work out for him. Can we take a second to talk about how cool Ice Sigil actually looks on the ground here? With fire and wind stacked up, those jagged spikes make it look kind of awesome. Alright, so we officially have New Sirocco on hold at the moment, because not talking to Evangeline completely freezes the entire questline, giving us infinite time to do as we please. With just enough funds to purchase the Arena Specialist upgrade, we can now compete in the Gladiators Arena. Here, you challenge powerful warriors from across the land. Win, and you're rewarded with medals that can be spent on various upgrades. This will once again place us into really tight circle areas, making it hard to prepare. The difference being that I can fully buff up with potions and foods, then place all sigils in the arena before asking to fight, wasting only a few seconds if I'm quick enough about it. My first opponent was the Masters of the Ocean, 3 Kazite pirates with poison-coated weapons. While tight circles would have been my bane before, they're now the problem for my enemies. Sigils, as it turns out, cover almost the entire arena, so good luck avoiding my damage, guys. There isn't anywhere to go. I seem to have overestimated these fellows, as that hardly lasted 10 seconds. Next up, we have Guardian of the Marsh. This is a tall armored warrior carrying a halberd and wielding lightning magic. He gave me much more trouble as his elemental defenses seem a lot higher than I remember. The lightning balls can be easy to walk into when you're avoiding a long weapon like this, plus Wind Sigil had not cooled down yet, meaning I had to cast it mid-fight. Really messy is how I would describe it. With nice elemental defense and good dodges away from his spin attacks, we emerge victorious in the end. Finally, for our final fight, we take on the Wolfgang Mercenary, a magic wielder not unlike myself, making use of runes and chakrams. I think when it comes down to who's better at magic, my power tends to win out. All his magic takes seconds to write out runic letters, while I blast him with explosions. It also seems like this particular warrior gets far less impact resistance than the last. Almost any action I take knocks him over. If I saw that correctly, he never even used his most powerful weapon. Chakrams are unbelievable in the right hands. Okay, so we now know for sure sigils beat runes. At least sigils beat a rune user who has no clue what he's doing. With all 3 fights won, we collect our medals and take them over to the specialist. He has 2 passive skills we are interested in. One of them increases your elemental damage but hurts your stamina, which I may or may not take later. I don't know, that one sounds risky for a stamina fanatic like myself. The other option is what's called Unsealer. Speed up sigil placement skills and extend their duration by 20 seconds. Lower max life by 25. Are you starting to see the picture here? This is the perfect upgrade that will fix every problem we've been having thus far. Less health is annoying, but that's why we took the Blue Chamber questline. Blood of Giants gives us 40 extra health to work with, of which we will still have 15 left. And the difference is astonishing. Sigils get cast instantly and last much longer. Wind Sigil actually still takes much longer than the other sigils, oddly enough, but even that was sped up by a lot. And with that one big upgrade, we leave Caldera for the time being. On our way to Berg, I stop by the Cabal Wind Temple, cheese us a few horror weapons by trapping all the monsters into explosions, then sell all of our loot for coin, just enough to give us leeway at shops, you know? And now we can travel to Harmattan where we begin the Rust and Vengeance questline. We're briefly threatened by a dying robot as he claims Harmattan will be destroyed within 60 days. I attune myself to the rune inside his mechanical ribcage, then making my way over to the lovely Annabelle, who sells us a house for 500 silver. Using some gold stored up in my chest, we can finally purchase Blood Sigil and Lockwell's Revelation, finishing off our 3rd skill tree. Now, the first location I always head to when clearing out this train dungeon is the Living Quarters. While I slay the many enemies and Kazai Admiral lurking here, let's talk about our new skills. Lockwell's Revelation is a passive that increases elemental damage. However, this only occurs when your character is tired. You get 15% more damage at tired and 30% more damage at very tired. Don't get me wrong, this is an insane damage boost for magic, making what is already strong kinda broken. My issue is being tired isn't my favorite. You gain more mana regen, which is kinda crazy, but also gain huge downsides to your stamina cost. Not to mention, if you get to a max tired state, this counts as a death. I never used this passive even once for the rest of the playthrough. It's definitely doable without any major effort, but I found it easier to just not worry about it at all. Then you have Blood Sigil, which you may notice right now I almost never use. This requires dark stones that we can only acquire from siphoning corruption out of our soul. You're never going to get a lot of these stones, so I always save them up for the hardest encounters, mainly against big bosses. We will talk about what the sigil actually does when we get there, but that's the general idea moving forward. With the Trog key in my back pocket, we find the mana train which can take us to the Ancient Foundry. This location is protected by a more powerful golem variant, the Lightning Dancer. I waited until his back was turned and then began to set everything up. To my surprise, he didn't catch me during this process, making things almost too easy for me. With all my boons up, immolation active, and sigils at the ready, there really isn't anything to fear. Except my own unbridled power. An unfortunate broken golem learns how to not counter an ice mage as he falls to pieces on the ground. His lower foundry key opens the way to some more golems. Conjure them because, while it isn't the most efficient of all time, gotta have that juicy footage for the viewer or else it's off with my head. Snatch up the ever so important warehouse key we can use at a different location later on. Since these dungeons are full of valuable loot, my pack is feeling very heavy at this point. There's a shortcut back to town from here, but I had to deal with 2 special horror variants first. First up was Laserface. These guys have an attack that looks like it might be very dangerous. They slap the ground, connecting with you from miles away. It's mostly meant to just knock you over instead of killing you. He doesn't last long. Against the more centaur-looking creature, I am 100% noticing that extra length on my sigils. 20 seconds doesn't sound like that much overall, but it's added on to 60, and in a fight, that's the difference between lasting till the end or just not. By now, I've also mastered the timing of lightning strikes from heaven, making combat absurdly fun. Yeah, I was having a little bit too much fun with these fights, which I guess is what you want, really. After a quick rest stop in town, we make our way across the Mana Lake and into the destroyed test chambers. One very important tidbit of info you need to know about magic is that this location is gonna suck when using it. Not because of the trogs, they are as easy as they were at the beginning of the game, mainly because of the elementals. These floating jelly-like creatures can inflict a status that almost doubles your mana cost. On top of that, they play heavily into medium range. You need to kite back constantly for them to move into sigils, and overall it's just a nightmare. What's odd is I was here for probably 20 minutes backing up, healing, taking more damage, and then doing this on repeat. Yet somehow I never caught the lay wilt disease. Percentage chances are kinda weird that way. After pulling the lever, then defeating a literal army, we can grab the train key A. Taking a frigid and icy elevator ride down leads to another dangerous golem. For those unaware, this train dungeons system was where golems were originally created. They were used to combat the scourge monsters back when they first appeared. Now they're out of control and stand guard all over this region, fighting back against those monsters still, as well as innocent mages like myself. For the liquid-cooled golem, I made my move. An even more powerful version of the arcane golem we fought so long ago. I really didn't want to be caught without my pants up. Move away from the icy ball he summons as that deals continuous damage. Then it's pretty easy to dodge left every time he shoots out spikes. And stay away from him in general or else an explosion will rock your world. Sigils are great, indeed they are. But what on earth would I do without these dynamite hexes? So clutch when I need them. Not only did this frozen machine drop an ice particle, but the next ice elemental did as well. And even the next after that. Talk about having luck with particles. 4 cold stones ain't too shabby either. Activating the console, we can unlock more tunnels for the train to travel through, which takes us to the Lost Golem manufacturing facility. I always thought this should be called the Last facility instead of Lost, but I guess both ideas work in this case. The main threat here is a nasty creature called the Greater Grotesque. Just look at that sigil casting speed go. By now, we're playing a completely different game than before. I'm talking instant use of all my magic with greater power than melee morons could ever hope to see. And there's 2 different damage bonuses we aren't using for this as well, which is kind of bonkers to think about. Potentially, you could be granted up to 45% more elemental damage, and I just waved that away like it was nothing? Watching this back along with you guys, I kind of feel like I missed out. Or I didn't even remotely need it because Conjure is back at it with the shenanigans, or as I call them, shenanigans. Yeah, no, that joke is pretty low, but I have to make it when I see the opportunity. Moving on, we pull a lever being protected by Scourge, opening a door to Gemstone Key C. The first of 4, that being A, B, C, and D. Outside, we let down a rope precariously placed over this bridge, leading us back to the town where we stock up once again. This does mean we have to make our way back through the empty dungeon to reach the mana trains once again, but with no threats to halt our progress, we soon make it to the loading docks. And of course, the place is filled to the brim with corruption. Wait a second, the place is filled to the brim with corruption. Darkstone forging can commence. Big ticket items to look out for here are the elevator key, which can be used to reactivate the enormous lift system. A fully powered elite golem getting his worldview shattered by my wind sigil. I swear, if this magic circle doesn't make a comeback in Outward 2, more golems get backhanded by yours truly, and then we exit at the top to let down a small shortcut. Why do I always do this before finishing the dungeon? Just in case I die and need to come back. Which isn't very useful in hardcore, I guess, but old habits die hard. Of course, our next opponent is an actual boss, the Scourge Beast. A corrupted giant has taken over this entire section of the train dungeon, threatening the Rust Lich himself. We don't really want to help the Lich any more than we have to, but I never miss an opportunity to fight the Scourge either. Finally able to place down Blood Sigil, I ran into the first of many times where my quick slots were kinda goofed up. 4 separate sigils wastes already half of my quick slots, as you really can't put them down from your inventory while in a fight. Conjure was the item I took off when I should have replaced one of the hexes, so I had to finagle things a bit for this to work. Wind, Ice, and Blood Sigil all have a powerful combo move with Wind Push. Activate your high stagger ability, and now Blood Tendrils, an Ice Shard, and a Mana Shot are fired towards the target. Blood Tendrils don't have near as much range as the other 2, but enough to usually hit. The real power of Blood Sigil for this run was Conjure. When used inside Blood Sigil, you get what's called a Blood Turret. A very dark orb shows up above the sigil, firing decay repeatedly for some time. The decay deals nice damage but constant impact, allowing you to infinitely stagger opponents if they're about 60% to 40% impacted. Blood Sigil also builds up corruption when you use it, so while you do have to use a dark stone, you typically get one back for every use. I was worried about too much corruption in this arena, but somehow it didn't build up enough. It can also be helpful to separate a sigil here and there in case the main ones become blocked by some damage source. We need to circle around most of the fight, but it ultimately leads to what I like to call complete domination. With the creature's defeat, we are warned by the Rustlich himself to not interfere with his plans. Of course, that's exactly what we're gonna do, as outside sits Gemstone Key D right for the taking. Mana Transfer Station always has been one of my favorite dungeons to explore. You have mana reservoirs stored up, pipes of energy flowing throughout the place. It truly has a magical feel to it. It's more appropriate to take this all in during a mage run than any other time. Unfortunately, I did catch the Leywilt disease here, as elementals were managing to be far more difficult in this playthrough than any other. Up the elevator we go to snatch up a Mana Transfer Elevator Key. One of my favorite things to do has to be straight up bullying shell horrors. These horrifying tanks of corruption give every new adventurer the most trouble. I think mainly due to large enemies often still having very fast attacks, and usually they do enough impact to flatten you too. Funnily, Leywilt is bad for mages, but it also increases your elemental defense with barrier. So the arcane elemental before made me invincible when fighting this one. The world's a funny place like that. This sublime shell got obliterated rather quickly, I might add. He remains here to protect a chromatic arcane elemental. Not the best protector in the world it seems, since he only lasted 3 seconds. Are you starting to understand why I hate these things so much? The gameplay looks like this every time, as you're supposed to melee them. Now you also know why I wasn't so excited to unslot hexes yet. When nothing else works, they still do. That might be my first mana potion taken since getting mana regen. It's not really hard to get back at all in most cases, but wow, did I have a lot this time around. After dismembering a few more beasties with my rainbow power, no, actually for rainbow we would need purple. Hey, why don't we have an ethereal sigil? Oh wait, because it would be the strongest thing in the game, no questions asked? You make a fair point. Grab the Gemstone Key B and venture back to town for some upgrades. On the way, I found easily the most dangerous encounter in Outward. 2 fully weaponized sword golems strutting around in the snow. One of these guys is trouble. 2 of these guys is game over. What I should do is run past the duo as fast as my little mage legs can carry me. But this is YouTube. You guys didn't come here to watch a coward. Things start poorly as I take several hits to the face. Luckily, Mana Ward was active, making me immune. Totally not one of the best defenses in the entire game. No, that's definitely not the case at all. Then they sort of flopped over. I guess it's easy to forget how much damage you can deal when sigils are stacked. I mean, with Immolate active, Fireball plus Electric Spark plus Ice Blast takes its toll on even the most threatening of enemies. I gotta say, that put me in a pretty good mood. Let's try not to get overconfident now, though. We still have quite a long way until this adventure is fully over. Which reminds me, I hunted down Dreamer's Root for Enchanting. This wasn't hard at all, as the purple flowers are all over in these valleys, but it was notable for what we do next. About time we get our gear some enchantments, don't you think? Using ice particles and Dreamer's Root, we can alchemy up some chrysalis incense. Take that and combine it with tourmaline, purifying quartz, and an ice particle giving morpho incense. Outside, we place down pillars around an enchanting table to the west and north. When we slot our helmet into the table, it can be buffed with stabilizing forces, -5 mana cost, and +5 impact resistance. The same can be done to our chest plate, instead granting 3% movement speed and +10 impact resistance. The main weakness of mage armor is its lack of stability, or how long you can block. For the boots, we want some simple Monarch incense. Place that around the table as well and get the Aegis enchant, +1 protection for more physical defense. With our build finally put together after what feels like an eternity, we head towards the warehouse. This old storage facility contains a massive population of Immaculates. As the Sorbor Academy members attempt to drive them away, they seem to have found refuge here in the abandoned war zone. Fire Sigil makes quick work of our first opponent, and we're already noticing a nice improvement to our block potential. Not much the enemy can do do if you simply negate all their damage. Immaculate number 2 proves to be a good sport as Wind Sigil cleans him up without too much complication. Then for the duo encounter with 2 more powerful Immaculates, I pulled out the works. We got every single sigil here, and fire ring around the circle. Oh, and yes, in case you're wondering, seeing what's actually going on does start to become a problem eventually. Especially after lightning and fire effects go off, I tend to lose both the enemy and my own character. Whatever gives us the win is fine with me, but I almost feel like too much mage could be a thing. With access to the control room, we run into a mechanical contraption of alarming size. I modify the dungeon's defender with ghostly Wendigo armor so fire is able to put in work, 10-ton hammer so we don't get one shot by spinning swords, and corruption vents because after all, more corruption means more darkstones. It is worth noting that my entire early expedition into Caldera was because of the MK Golem. This deviant here makes it impossible for you to get sigils down as the arena is simply not large enough to find safety, and his ability to stunlock you to death is frustrating to say the least. And I don't want to downplay how important the extra casting speed was, but could it be that I may have overestimated this foe a tad? I mean, I literally designed this entire run around MK Golem being a run ender, and he more or less just stood there taking a beating. In fact, this battle somehow went smoother than my fight with the Scourge Beast not long ago. Get ready for that little irony to pop up again, as the arena bosses were quite different than I expected them to be. But enough foreshadowing. With the gemstone key A in hand, we set out for the research laboratory. Insert all 4 keys at this contraption and watch as the way to the Rustlich is opened wide. He's not all that happy about our progress, and it appears the Scourge had broken in as well. A unique sublime shell holds on to yet another key we need to move forward. I showed him the definition of fireball, and he learned that when a mage asks for something, you give it up, simple as that. Although I did forget to ask him for it and instead just started blasting. So that's kind of my B on this one. I'll do better in the future. All the floors here contain some variant of golem or scourge monster fighting against one another. Each goes down like most of the fights we've seen before, but one in particular gave me quite a scare. Experienced players will remember a teleporter taking you up against 2 beast golems and a sword golem. I always describe this as the most dangerous encounter here, as 3v1 means one mistake and it's all over. Well, I probably should have waited on Wind Sigil because Fireball decided to really not do anything anymore. Each beast golem jumps to the side as soon as it's cast, flying into a wall and leaving me open for their razor-sharp pointy faces to stab away. After healing up, the sword golem jumped in, making everything so much worse. Now, when it comes to hardcore modes in video games, you do everything you can to survive, whether it be cheesy tactics, close calls you just think RNG for, or dumb enemy AI. A win is all that matters. While I was able to make it through with running and kiting skills, no, I really wasn't all that proud of this encounter. At least here we can soon redeem ourselves with a similar ambush. And it all goes terribly wrong once again. What is wrong with me right now? It's not even the sword golems giving me trouble. The beast golems will not get hit by my magic. Alrighty, one more golem for today and we can be done with them. Sometimes I get surprised out of nowhere by enemies I fought time and time again. Then times like this happen where I know exactly how to manipulate a foe's stagger for perfect casting. Close to perfect anyway. But this at least made me feel better about the whole thing. No chance both of these elementals just dropped a particle. What kind of run even is this? Time to save Harmattan once and for all by stopping the Rustlich. Our mechanical overlord tends to be on the easy side, and I don't mean a little less difficult than most bosses, I mean he's a complete joke. All you really need is 1 spirit varnish on a melee weapon and it's 90 night to the beaked fellow. That is, except I don't have a melee weapon at the current time. With magic only, the fight gets a lot more complicated. We need to first kill several forge golems walking around. They don't have much health really, but getting them into one spot every time isn't easy. Then the Rustlich lets his barrier down to revive them. In order for us to deal decent damage, we need our sigils placed on him at that time. And what do you know, he teleports every time he resummons his barrier back up. I have plenty of hours in this game, but it's times like these that make hardcore runs scary. I don't know the right strategy. I don't know the best places for each sigil. I don't know the perfect skills to have ready at any given time. Once again, you may notice my defenses are high enough to leave room for mistakes. As a mage, you have a very easy time being close to immune to elemental damage. Physical sure does still hurt, but we did enchant our armor to help with that. And using runic protection with a lexicon before tough fights, along with Gaberry wine, gives you at least 6 or 7 freebies before you need to get worried. My main takeaway was placing Wind Sigil near the Rustlich as soon as he teleports is key. This lets the other sigils stay open for damaging forge golems, and once his shields go down, you can light him up with shockingly powerful magic. It's a lengthy fight, and you have to have extra stones in your pocket. Still nothing more annoying than getting this man to 1 HP as he summons his shield at the last second. To be fair, it did let me get possibly the greatest shot in history, with a legion of dead forge golems and one thunderstorm of glory soon after. We crush his phylactery, breaking what immortality he had left. Strip his armor off for ourselves, as it has some excellent stats for mages. Loads of elemental damage, decent physical defense, okay mana costs. Wow, we might want that for a future boss, honestly. Spoiler alert, you will never see this set again. Sorry, Rust Lich armor, I got a little too attached to my skill cooldown. And with that, we alert the headmaster of our accomplishment. He throws some pity particles my way, which I don't really need at this point, and without really getting a decent thank you at all, we've yet again saved the world from an unparalleled evil. I know I'm forgetting something really important right about now, but for the life of me, what is it? I stopped a civil war and ended a dangerous lich. Something about a volcano rattling around in my mind somewhere. Ah well, surely it wasn't that important. Let's travel over to the swamp and start clearing out some of those dangerous monsters we were too weak to fight before. Razorhorn Stegosaur can be found underneath the center tree of the Hallowed Marsh. The red hue glowing from him differentiates the beast as an alpha. I had a nice clean burn going until Fireball decided to knock the dino back into the water. Funny to think that being inside water doesn't actually put out the burning status. The hot magic is an inner burning indicating from outside the body. At least that's my excuse. I thought it worked out pretty well. Inside the dark ziggurat, we make sure to pull both levers, locking away the Plague Doctor. There were many golems and acolytes protecting the Pyramid of Green, but honestly nothing even remotely stood a chance. The Jade Lich asks us to test our mettle against his power, and we accept. Liches in general become very interesting opponents as they themselves are full mages. The Jade Lich's gimmick is that he never wants to be near you. All his abilities revolve around overwhelming you from a distance, and so keeping him inside my circle of power was difficult to say the least. I have several advantages over the green fellow, but what I really wanted was a nice lightning strike to land on him, which eventually I got, and it was oddly a bit underwhelming. For some reason I thought it would deal over half his HP. Spark instantly cleans up this mess directly after, proving it's not about the size or cost of the spell that matters, but rather how you use it. After his defeat, the Plague Doctor grants us his full set of armor and staff, which is remarkably strong for decay magic. We hold on to this set as well, but it won't get used either. A short ways away, we find ourselves in a dark and abandoned jade quarry. I made my way to the right, sort of skipping all the Taunosaurs out of intelligence. The annoying troglodyte is as dumb as he is fast. While the poison water here can quickly infect you, I threw on the Jade Lich helmet to become completely immune to green damage. Okay, yes, we did use the Jade Lich set for a few seconds. Are you happy now? This guy ran from me all the way back near the cave's original entrance, and of course he decides to lead me directly into a Stegosaur den. I'd like to think that was a coincidence, but he knew what he was doing. Had some scholar boots this time, which is fitting for the mage run. Well, I've put this off as long as possible, but no more. The Lightmender in his ivory tower of gold is going down. Similar to the MK Golem, this was a fight I didn't think possible without faster sigil speed. Lightmender can attack very quickly, and he doesn't leave a lot of room in between attacks for you to set up. That's where Blood Sigil came in. You can now clearly see how useful the stagger component of this blood turret is. At a certain point, the Undead Lich of ultimate power is stun locked, giving me time to pick up my backpack and place sigils. Now, Wind Sigil was useless since lightning against a lightning boss is really not optimal. The other three, however, proved more than enough. Although it was here that I noticed something very problematic. Mana Ward inside of Fire Sigil causes Immolate. It also causes something called Gift of Blood inside of Blood Sigil. Both of them decrease your health, which can be out-healed easily. However, both at the same time overcome the healing, forcing us to take considerable damage. And since Gift of Blood buffs your co-op partner or minions, it does nothing for us but hurt deeply. We're gonna want to split those two sigils up for longer fights if possible. And for our last opponent, we meet the Altered Gargoyle. Lightning strikes deal with him almost exclusively, as the wall gets in my way for some unintentional clipping there. I have to bring up once again how rare it is to have this infinite mana and infinite stamina kind of state. You literally can't take damage if you have enough stamina, and I'm feeling pretty good about our success chances at this point. Endmerker Forest also hides some dangerous creatures who really need to be hunted down. Face of the Ancients still manages to be one of the coolest caves in Outward, with a hot and almost volcanic entrance leading to frozen halls of icy dread. In the back, we find the first cannibal, or more accurately, this hungry Wendigo finds me. I've noticed that sometimes if you walk too close to the gate trapping him inside, he walks much further out of his den. Pulled off a few risky moves here, as he just barely missed me with those massive claws. Listen, I love the melee combat in this game more than anybody else, I would imagine. But there's nothing quite as intoxicating as overall magical dominance. When you can burn a literal cannibal monster to a crisp in seconds, you know you've made it. This frozen behemoth seems to have eaten a key. We head back towards his den and unlock some sort of chamber revealing the Scarlet Lich's idol. Take this back into the warm section of the dungeon and place it in front of the Scarlet Lady's statue. She awakens and thanks you for returning some of her power back to her. We are noticed for being part of the Aberdeen family, but we already know fully well enough to not join up with a devil witch such as the Red Lady. May we never be her enemy, she says. Yeah, about that. So we snatch up the Red Lady's dagger as our prize and continue on. The Royal Manticore was dwelling in the very back of her little valley, most likely battling some bandits and winning. Yes, I think I can safely say without checking she would win against some bandits. I was unlucky enough to have placed down my magic in the tallest grass possible. This doesn't mean anything against the Chimera itself, but sorry, our limited vision is even worse than it usually is. Combine every possible magic effect with tall green grass and you will never know what I did here. Basically dodge her thrown spikes, block all the melee attacks, and then spam Q and 1. Mana Push and Spark are fast, powerful, and all we really need. Dang it, again I managed to get Gift of Blood and Immolate active at the same time. I really need to stop combining those or we're gonna run into trouble. Honestly, I'm not a big fan of Gift of Blood in general, but to each their own. And for our last non-Caldera monster, we battle the Tyrant of the Hive. And I got overconfident. After all the incredible fights, this green giant, arguably the easiest when using fire, was the one that hit me the hardest. For the first time, my impact wasn't enough to stop my enemy's attacks, and using Conjure didn't make things better as I am now 1 hit left of HP. Poor guy's extremely weak to elemental damage, so no need to freak out, but why do I always have to get all rattled like that right before Caldera? Which reminds me, that's what I forgot to do. A city in imminent danger of being melted by a volcano. Townspeople who desperately need my assistance in building, and a secret foe who has yet to show his face. Yeah, that's somewhat important, I would imagine. Back in New Sirocco, we make some delicious foods with our free stash before speaking with Evangeline. As you can see, we froze the in-game timer on this quest by simply not talking to her, keeping the town safe until we could return. Unfortunately, the 3 leaders inform me that the lava level is rising at an alarming rate, seemingly for no reason at all. When all of a sudden, the Crimson Avatar shows up to threaten our party of do-gooders. Destroy the town and move back into a volcano, or suffer the wrath of a corrupted leader, who randomly has godlike powers now for some reason. Well, I'm not moving people back into that dreaded lava pool, so we kinda need to deal with this guy. Yep, I would imagine that floating red-hot meteor is some indication of where this fiend is hiding. In the center of this crater, a cave entrance has opened up, leading to the Scarlet Sanctuary. This location houses many of the different enemy variants created by the Red Lich, souls of her lost descendants and servants who have become slightly less alive and human at that. Something even more interesting about this place is it seems to be one of the main dwellings of the Scarlet Lady herself. The sculptures and artwork depict her very being, and everything is this red color she loves so very much. The odd thing, however, is how the structure is crafted. Every door you go through leads to a more confusing layout. The ceiling of the room is on the wall of another. The floor of one platform could be hanging sideways somewhere else. It appears her power is more vast than the other liches we've encountered thus far. Not to mention, she herself isn't even in the place. Fairy tales say that she was banished to the Red Moon ages ago. Remember that meteor floating over our heads seems to have landed and formed that crater we walked into. Maybe the myths and legends are more true than we thought. Well, after countless battles with fire demons, horses, and men, we pull several levers opening up access to the throne room. Guarding the entrance is none other than Chamber Lord Orville himself. He notices my affiliation with the Cryptea and curses me for opposing the Red Lady. We try to reason with him, but his mind is too far gone. In his quest to rule Sirocco and all the Caldera region, he has lost himself. A lust for power has turned him into a mere puppet of the Red Lady, and it's time we end his reign of terror. So apparently if you enter as the Crimson Avatar is looking backwards, he simply doesn't notice you. Very handy when it takes you 15 seconds to set everything up. Now, there really isn't much to say about this fight. Fire Sigil and Ice Sigil are great for damage and easily cast down. Wind Sigil is by far the most effective and not all that hard to use either, as the boss tends to jump towards you to melee. And Blood Sigil, well, Blood Sigil is the beast that it usually is. What surprised me most was how easy it was to use my different magics. The Crimson Avatar by design is built around overwhelming you. Lasers, balls of fire, larger balls of fire, and he can cover the entire arena to jump you with melee. Yes, a mage as powerful as this still wants to beat you over the head with his staff. It's quite amusing, really. But when he summons those fireballs to circle around, that takes about 5 seconds, which leaves time to get in your backpack, rummage around for stones, and reset if need be. In the end, I did way more damage than I thought, ending the fight quicker than ever before. Conjure, unfortunately, didn't get any super cool moments and actually caused me to take laser damage because it has such a lengthy cast time. I still think this is one of the best boss fight designs I've ever seen. He's definitely weak to something, that being ice, and you can't infinitely impact him because he's immune to confusion. You're more or less battling your own awareness as you need to pay attention to 3 things at once. His actual combos aren't complicated at all. And with that, the madman has perished, severing the ties between our world and the Scarlet Lady. Upon removing this staff from its pedestal, the magical heat produced from it vanishes. With her last bit of magic, the Red Lich claims these new bloodlines are weak. Real power is hers, and she will return to the land of Ari one day. No longer will she be a myth told to children among the campfire light. Her ideals will become a reality. Considering this is the 4th Lich of great power we've defeated, along with a genie, multiple monsters, and even entire armies, I'm not all that worried. We'll kick her butt again and again if we have to. Now back in the main room of this sanctuary, we make one more quick stop. If you have the Red Lady's dagger in your pocket at this time, that's that reward she gave us before at her original statue. An interactable wall will open up. Enter, and you are now inside the inner sanctum of the Red Lady. Her dancing spirit can be seen floating above a red moon. We collect the scarlet gem stashed here and begin to wonder, was this demon of great power once beautiful and full of hope? Was she full of potential and great power steered toward the common good? How can something so beautiful be so full of hate and corruption? Best not to linger here long, or we'll never escape this maze of questions. Combining this secret gem with the cracked red moon staff we ripped from the Scarlet Lady converts it back into its original form. The Revenant Moon Staff humming with the Scarlet Lady's immense power. It hungers for our mana and raises the air temperature around me. Throw that into the vault of stuff I have, but will never use, because it's obviously all about hoarding stuff over anything else. Upon returning back to town, we learned that the lava level has dropped back down, and New Sirocco is safe for the foreseeable future. I'm left as overseer of the town, seeing as I've done a pretty fine job thus far. And there you have Outward, beaten, using only magic. The courier meets me one last time with a letter from Risa. I'm free to do as I please, and am more than worthy of my Aberdeen name. No more quests to complete, no more world-ending monsters to be stopped. Life is good once again in the land of Ari. We enter the mines of Sirocco, heading towards the new horse statue recently dug up. Slotting an amethyst, geode, voltaic vines, and petrified organs repairs the magnificent steed to its former glory, granting a small severed obsidian pet. This little fiery fellow is as adorable as he can be, and even though he can't help me fight, he will surely be a welcome companion in my life of peace. But while settling down sounds nice and all, I'm not ready to give up my adventuring quite yet. Paying for a ride to Harmattan, we can free the troglodyte merchant. She's been captured over in a trog den next to the mana lake. Once that's done, we can interact with a special patch of flowers behind some Buzu to face the elite Buzu. Arena bosses are special in Outward as they possess more health and stagger resistance than anything in the game. They also have major resistances and weaknesses to different elements. What started to throw me off almost immediately was how unexpected these fights became. All the ones I expected to be easy became the most difficult, and all the fights that should have nearly ended me were a breeze. This wasn't just a fluke or 2 or 3 fights either, it was every single arena boss. The elite Buzu, however, still remains one of the least threatening bosses, as he simply can't stand up long enough. In the friendly Immaculate's cave, we shrink down into the little bird cage there to defeat the Immaculate's bird. This little guy only has 300 health, but is 70% resistant to all elements, meaning only 30% of our damage can get to him at any given time. The real problem with this crazy bird man is his speed. It's nearly impossible to do anything, as 1 second later he's sprinting up to you or teleporting to your location. And since he's only able to be staggered like a single time, there's no extra breathing room. This was the start of a series of extremely messy fights. Without proper defense buffs active, I would have been a goner for sure. One good backup plan is the Mana Ward and Blood Turret combo. When all else fails, activate Mana Ward so the Blood Turret can be activated as you're immune to hits. Then at least something is damaging the boss while you panic. I'm starting to think that placing each sigil in different spots could be more efficient for better control. Near the Kazite camp, we send this bandit captain soaring through the air as he takes his final breath. Walk all the way back down to his body and collect the bandit key. This can be used to free the Trog merchant a second time in the more hidden Kazite encampment. Now that this merchant is fully free, we enter the train dungeons and purchase 5 tourmaline from her. Take this to a secluded statue up north to battle the elite Sublime Shell. Our magic overwhelms this mystical beast just like all the rest. However, the corruption in this arena, combined with his laser and my blood sigil, created a massive problem. I am almost 100% corrupted. This will increase slowly while in here, and if I get hit, and if I use the blood sigil. Get to exactly 100% corruption and you explode internally, nearly killing you. Well, after fighting it off for as long as possible, I eventually got hit by a laser and exploded. I was able to survive, thankfully, but without too much health left. At least I know better than to enter boss fights without health pots. And we don't need to do all that much more for the corrupted beast to go down. This is the first time max corruption has been a problem though, and I'm really not excited to deal with it again. Yeah, we can easily cure that, but not in the middle of a fight, mind you. Next, we make our way over to the swamp, making some of those delicious marshmallow tartines. Interacting with the different statues in the giant's village gives us 2 boss fights, the first being against a high monk priest. The easiest boss in the game by far. I said the easiest boss in the game. Okay, well this sure isn't going well. Crap! I didn't manage to get my backpack off in time before he already was on me, and there goes all my HP while he's still untouched. Dude, come on, I can't even attack at all without getting walloped. He's literally chasing me down so quickly I have no way to heal. Oh, thank goodness he let up for just a second. What in the world just happened? I officially hate this giant. So yes, indeed this is the easiest arena boss in the game most of the time. Apparently with sigils in particular, you can't easily activate any of your skills without leaving yourself open. The lightning messes with your spacing, and man, his reach is a whole other can of worms I don't even want to open. I prefer we never speak of this encounter again, so let's all agree to that right now. The other giant fight is against 3 frost giants in a frost arena. If you thought 1 giant was problematic, well, let me tell you, my good friend, 3 is 3 times worse. Typically, Fire Sigil ends up being the best for both of these giant fights. Since that packs so much power for us, I was flabbergasted at my inability to fight these 3 stooges. Thank goodness for Mana Ward. Thank goodness for Blood Sigil. And come on, stop having so much reach. I've been running around in circles for 30 minutes. I can only imagine the pain this would have brought me without Sigil casting speed. Finally, 1 giant goes down and things should in theory get a lot better. Well, they should have, but this whole arena boss thing is quickly going down the drain. 2nd giant goes down, letting us do our whole instant explodey thing for the win. Please don't get any worse from here, I beg of you. Deep within one of the ziggurats, we can interact with a drowning burning man. This takes us to the Alpha Taunosaur. Typically one of the harder monsters for me as he can both burn and bleed. But with the world all topsy-turvy right now, he couldn't even get to me. Responding with a melee weapon doesn't work well as the dino falls backwards when he gets staggered. With magic, I don't really care how much distance he leaves between me and him. I also managed to get him stuck between my sigils and the arena's edge, leaving him no room to escape. Of all things, it was the fire that took out this fire dino. His 3 fire missiles are pretty annoying as they seem to have a much larger explosion radius than it looks, but it pays to be fire resistant as usual. Before leaving Monsoon for the last time, I did pick up the mage's poking stick from Lane the Alchemist. We'll need that for later. Now we're getting into the really fun stuff. Double liches can be found in the large blue chamber. I never know when to buff for this one as you only have a 5-second window or so before the entrance fades. The trick with these guys is just being immune to their damage. Like there's decay being sprayed at you the entire time and lightning balls flying your way every 3 seconds. You have to have high elemental resistance because no way are you dodging everything. Lightning can also be baited out to activate a longer explosion, giving us ample time to do what we need to do. Blood Sigil is amazing against the bright fellow while useless against the other. That, plus burning, gets the job done. You might notice I threw on the Lightmender's helm for this one. I needed a slight boost in lightning defense and it has an insane amount. Also amazing negative mana cost, like my mana ever even went down before. And then it's a 1v1 fight with the Jade Lich. We already saw how this one goes earlier. If we poison ourselves in the Cabal Wind Temple, we can encounter the Dreamer Immaculate. This tall fellow's laser and explosion do way too much damage. But with Blood Sigil there to back me up, I had health potions slotted good at the ready. There are some fights I'm comfortable doing without health potions in my hotbar, but ones like this can go downhill fast, and it's more about how aggressive the boss is. If I know going in that the boss will never let up, then there's zero chance I have time to enter my inventory then use a potion. It's hard enough to just get through the animation of drinking. Another one of my most feared opponents falls over like a wet noodle. Was worried about corruption levels again, since this is a corruption enemy after all. Thankfully, if you don't get hit that often, you don't corrupt as much. Crazy concept, I know. With the Sunfall Axe in hand, we enter the Burning Tree and tackle the elite Burning Man. Once again, I had equipped the Gold Lich Mask, as with it, I become immune to fire. What's the only thing a Burning Man can do? That would be throw harmless fire at you. Ice Sigil is as good as you would expect here. Both Mana Push and Mana Ward cut out chunks of his HP every time. With this staff buffing it even further, I was pretty excited to get lots of value out of it. The tier 3 skill we missed out on by taking Ice Sigil is more fire damage and resistance. Obviously a huge buff for any build, making it really hard to pick Ice Sigil. But then again, how can you give up all these ice spikes that cover the ground? It's about the spectacle of it all. Now in Levant, we can not do the bosses here, as they scare me. No, instead we're hunting a few rainbow pearl birds. These guys have raw jewel bird meat. Purchasing the chemist's broken flask from Tuan the alchemist and buying an alchemist's backpack lets us make it all the way over to Sirocco without our food going bad. It's nice to be home after all this time, but we unfortunately cannot stay. Taking a small rowboat down by the docks, we can travel back to the original island we were once shipwrecked on. An unknown knight clad in full Tsar armor awaits me here. I accept his duel, making sure to cast down Fire Sigil as he's 90% resistant to that. Sometimes it's very apparent that I know what I'm doing, other times I look like a fish out of water. My hotbar didn't exactly have some of the better skills in it, as I'm constantly swapping out Blood Sigil for hexes or conjure for something else. But then I need all my most powerful tools for the boss fights. Not really a problem as hexes pop down the Tsar warrior as we get away without a scratch. That's some fancy loot you have there. I think it's coming with me. Now taking our jewel bird meat to the Trog Offering Stone, we can face the Trog Queen and her elite Trog warriors. There's not really much to comment on here. The blood turret pushes over even the queen every few seconds, as fire and lightning annihilate this den of mushroom monsters. We are still mostly immune to decay, so nearly unkillable, and I'm not even using Immolate. In theory, with 45 more damage being left out here, you can become so freaking powerful as a mage. Even bosses don't get to fight you for more than a few seconds. Mage done correctly is a sight to behold, and Outward does mage right. It was about now I had to stop at the beach for more blue sand. My fire stones are well stocked up from Caldera, but cold stones are completely used up. Blue sand and a mana crystal gets us about 26 cold stones. Since I somehow forgot to purchase the blacksmith's hammer in Berg, we can't fight Brand Squire at this time. Instead, let's finish off the elite shrimp accessed in the Voltaic hatchery. I more or less knew going in that sigils would be mostly useless. This large mantis shrimp backs up the entire fight, making it impossible to get him into sigil range. He did manage to catch me with a few lightning balls, as they were coming out quick when I was activating hexes. In hindsight, it would have been a good idea to activate Immolate, so the fire hex would have been more effective. Quite the slog as we rely on burning and poison to eat away at him. Actually, it turns out as the googly-eyed fellow gets closer to a wall, he can't outrange your sigils anymore. I miss my Sky Crown mace right about now though. Man, that thing is such a beautiful weapon with its ice damage and impact. Would have definitely made short work of this prawny beast. And with that, we only have one last session to go before all the bosses are taken down. Just the hardest ones left to deal with. No biggie, of course. Obviously, we have to finish off Brand Squire, so after buying the blacksmith hammer, we can combine all three trinkets with the rusted sword for Brand, allowing us to access the Brand Squire himself. So something cool about this boss is his blood tendril attack is what Blood Sigil does when you use Mana Push. And if I'm correct, this boss was in the game before Soroborian's DLC came out introducing the Blood Sigil. Also, the attack itself and this boss are from this studio's first game called Brand, which had Trogs, Chimeras, and a few similar enemies in it. Gotta admit, I'm a little upset we don't get access to his flame kick that literally casts a wall of fire across the room. Hello, who in their right mind would not give us that glorious piece of magic? Oh, and his sword does not feel good at all, so we came close to dying again. Notice a theme here yet? Now heading on over to the desert, we can battle the elite beast golem in one of the wrecked ships. I had to actually drop the key needed for this from a previous character, as in over 60 sometimes seeing the traveling Sorbor merchant, he never once had the giant iron key. It was all a plot to screw up my magic only run. Of this, I am convinced. While I was somewhat reluctant to face this boss, he turned out to be more of a joke than anything else. He is highly aggressive, but his stagger meter is laughably low. Like every individual hit of magic flew him backwards where blood turret kept him juggled. The only downside is because he is a robot, he's not very weak to my elemental damage. The fight lasted long enough for me to become almost fully corrupted, and there's not even any corruption in this arena. That all came from blood sigil. Oh, and also blocking. Blocking makes this mindless beast confused as heck, since nothing but his ice and fire shotgun gets through. Funny that a mere staff can be almost as effective at blocking as shields can. With power coils in hand, we access the Electric Lab's aquatic tanks for another 3-on-1 encounter. Because the last one went so well, hey, let's do it again. One massive problem with these sharks is they love to drop these mana bombs all over the arena. If you run into them, they explode with massive ethereal damage. My strategy to avoid these was placing several fire sigils down at once, letting me run to and from them or avoid one altogether if it was rigged to blow. Even with faster casting speed, placing sigils was incredibly challenging. Each shark sticks right to your tail, waiting to bite you if you slow down. Also, I made this way harder on myself by forgetting to reslot the mana ward skill. Without that, I'm missing an incredible source of damage and defense, also making the ice sigil minutely worthless. DOTs are the way to go for these fishy friends, so in the end, fire won out. But if you don't think I skipped an entire 5 minutes of sprinting in circles, then you are out of your mind. Finally, with all boons active, we can interact with Calixa's shield in the throne room and fight the Astral Knight herself, who has turned into the biggest pushover of all time. What in the world? I was expecting the hardest fight of the entire run here, but she's not dealing any damage to me with any of her attacks. Also, my damage looks exceptional, so I guess physical is what you don't want to use against her? Now, to be fair, I was no longer playing around and had to acquire every possible buff in the book. But when a godlike being such as this gets pushed around so much, you have to wonder what kind of title we should have earned by now. Godslayer? Maybe Lich Ender? What about Miraculous Mage? Sorcerer Supreme is already taken, although it would fit the theme decently well. If you come up with a good one, let me know. Calixa finds out how stupid blood magic is when used correctly and ultimately chooses to give up. Caldera bosses are next up, along with a few mini bosses I hadn't found before. The elite tor crab comes out to snack on our vagabond sandwiches, and once again a scary foe gives me no trouble at all. He loves to cover the entire room in ice and fire, but when you bring enough sigil stones to fight an army, it's not all that hard to just move over and cast again. I still love the design of this boss, a turtle or tortoise combined with a crab. So adorable and yet so terrifying at the same time. I'm 80% sure Blood Sigil did all the damage for me this time. Well, maybe not all of it, but I definitely was attacking way less often and he went down before I could blink. Our own grandmother was another reason I needed to gather blue sand before. She summons these two Cryptea warriors time and time again in hopes of defeating me. Her health slowly drains each time she brings one back to life. Since they're mere humans after all, they drop like flies. It is worth noting that the witch here has an attack identical to the Conjure and Wind Sigil combo, so while I cast lightning from the sky, she does the same. Then the melee guy is just over there getting destroyed, because who brings a halberd to a magic fight? Now a gun, that would be a different story altogether, but melee? Nah, get that trash out of my face. We make a quick stop over by the sulfuric caverns to exterminate a Grandmother Medivh, an enemy you don't want to fight multiple of, and one that will take some time to get rid of. That is, unless you're a master blaster with unrivaled explosions. I kid you not, Medivhs might as well not even exist for a mage, because you can rip them apart piece by piece. Is she even able to be considered for mini-boss status after that? Like right about now, you could have more trouble with a bandit of all things. Back in New Sirocco, I decided to get the gargoyles out of my way, which was a big mistake. Boy, did this go south in every possible way. Starting with the first of 3 gargoyles, this one got taken care of nicely. I learned how hard these constructs can hit when given a super spin attack, but starting off strong, we break him down to his core. Gargoyle number 2 is a similar case. Yes, his magic connected several times, and I don't remember it exploding that much. We get a cool lightning strike off, I get blasted by more magic, and with 2 targets down already, it looks like a decent fight to me. Next thing I know, my health is at half. I'm almost fully corrupted, and every one of my buffs had vanished. It seems he's only weak to Ethereal, which we only have one single shot of, and pretty tanky against Lightning and Decay. Oh, and it turns out he was healing himself the entire time. Broken boss, please fix. Oh hey, the caravaner has that key I was talking about. I don't need it now, you useless ingrate. So I moved the Ark for what felt like an hour. Geez, this thing did not want to dock in the right locations. Eventually, I made my way into the upper half of the Ark for a trio of gargoyles to rise up and protect their humble abode. From the room itself, we can infer this was the throne room of sorts for the Djinn. He and his Caligray friends traveled on this contraption from another land. Not really sure why they are here, but running from persecution they found even more, as the nobles enslaved the Djinn and tortured the Caligrays. The most unstable of these creatures also lies here, that being the cracked gargoyle, a beautiful yet dangerous monster who does not stand up against ranged magic really at all. At this point, I'm taking no risks if I don't have to, so we get a little cheesy once again. And now we head into the Vault of Stone, freeing the ancient dwellers from their dark prison. Yeah, it turns out you don't really have to free these guys ever. Never a foe to take lightly, but with lightning as their main weakness, they aren't too threatening to me. Which leads us to the last big bad of the run, the final mini-boss needed to be eradicated, the She Who Speaks. Guarding the elite Crimson Avatar with her life is yet another magic caster we need to compete with. Unfortunately, I forgot to remove my hexes in place of anything other than spark, so this was far more difficult than it needed to be. My ability to walk around various objects and kiting monsters around should be recorded and studied. No man was as good as he at staying just far enough away from his opponent to stay alive. Once again, I proved to be the absolute powerhouse of magic in this land. But our true test comes against one who is not of this land. Taking a short rest inside an ethereal totemic lodge, we gain a buff which lets us commune with the dead. The elite Crimson Avatar can now be reached. And it's time for one last showdown. So let's talk about a few things here. I was worried about this last encounter more than any other. In fact, I always fight the elite version of the Avatar last, as he is the easiest to mess up. You're forced to enter with a debuff that makes you extremely weak to physical damage. When sleeping in the Ethereal Totemic Lodge tent, it grants you a buff to ethereal damage, but a massive negative 35% weakness to physical. Since I am a mage, physical was already my weakness, and with my buffs like Gabbray Wine and Runic Protection, we are about at 0 defense to physical altogether. It's a bit more than that, but that should be fine for our purposes at the moment. Then you have this puppet containing 6000 HP and 60% resistance to decay. Right there, Blood Sigil is half as effective, a little worse than that actually, and he's not getting impacted anytime soon, let me tell you. Or so I thought. You see, what I completely forgot about the Elite Crimson Avatar is he's actually weak to fire. Of all the things he's immune to, you can still burn him, and burn him to a crisp as a matter of fact. Blood Sigil infinitely keeps his impact from regenning. The biggest factor making our friend here challenging is that he has very fast impact regeneration, meaning once you have him almost staggered, he could be immune to that very shortly. So even melee weapons can't combo fast enough to keep the madman down. But since Blood Sigil is a constant turret and we're lobbing fireballs, lightning, and other projectiles, he's laying on his back half the fight. I was awestruck. Juggling between different sigil placements let me weave in and out of his magic with ease. The two mistakes I made, however, were this. First off, I should have activated Immolate. Missing out on our 30% more burn damage hurt me big time, and I only avoided it because Mana Ward didn't fit in my hotbar, and I couldn't risk Gift of Blood slowly draining my health either. Honestly, you would have had to go into your inventory really quick to activate it, but still well worth it in the long haul. Second was not bringing corruption curing potions. For a really long fight like this, you need at least one, possibly 2 potions to cure corruption levels. By the end, I was risking full defilement and inner explosions, when a single potion in my pocket could have prevented this. Plus, this boss is very similar to its base version, having many openings for you to buff when needed. His final laser beam fails to connect, as the Puppet of Destruction falls slumped over face down in the cement. We are not only the saviors of this world, having stopped it from ending thrice now, but we are its champion as well. Its toughest challenges conquered like the gladiators of old. And so I make my way home. Through the rocky and volcanic terrain, through the lush forests of Enmerker, venturing into the heart of winter once again, back to my home in Sirocco. With all my loot thrown into the chest, we take one last look. We dethroned every false deity, cast out the corruption of this world where needed. The world is safe once more from a red lich locked away on her moon. It is now time to sleep, and sleep I do. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this journey, and if so, leaving a like down below could possibly get me to do more runs like this in the future. Mage is truly one of the greatest class types in RPG history. Magical power is creative, it's beautiful, and the destruction it can hold captures our full attention. Outward does magic in an incredibly fun way, letting you combine spells to create other effects. In the end, it becomes less about casting and more about comboing different strings of skills together. Hopefully you all enjoyed the video, and again, if you did, did, don't be afraid to join the channel. Next outward challenge I have in mind is with a weapon called the Challenger Great Hammer. Instead of giving you great power, it more or less gives great power to your enemies as you whack them. So that's kind of fun to think about. Other than that, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.